A woman lies peacefully asleep in her dimly lit bed as someone softly calls out to Estelle. A voice desperately pleads for someone to please take care of the resting babies. A tearful woman tenderly holds another's hand and firmly promises to take care of the children. Weeping bitterly beside the crib, she vows to protect the infants even if it costs her own life. The story officially begins with Chapter 1, featuring a portrait of a distinguished smiling man and an elegant young woman. The scene transitions to the grand, imposing exterior of a sprawling noble estate. Standing dramatically on the grand staircase with another woman clinging to him, a man points forward and publicly annuls his engagement to Estelle. Stunned by the sudden declaration, Estelle stands quietly as she is told she must atone for all her misdeeds. She quietly closes her eyes as the heavy, accusatory words wash over her. Internally, she notes that even in her previous life, she never encountered anyone quite this awful. She is actually a reincarnated Japanese woman now living as 18-year-old Estelle de Leon, a duke's daughter and the villainess of an otome game called The Name of the Rose. Pondering her strange situation, she admits she has no experience with otome games and barely understands the world she has been reincarnated into. She reflects on her life as a serious, top-tier student who became engaged to Crown Prince Roland to meet her parents' expectations, expecting him to escort her to tonight's Magic Academy graduation party. Instead, she finds herself caught in a classic villainous annulment event as Roland stands beside the game's heroine, the Baron's daughter Cecile. As someone pleads for the prince to wait, Estelle apathetically accepts the situation since she never actually liked him anyway. Another noble lady steps forward, murmuring quietly as she observes the dramatic spectacle unfolding before them. Lady Louise de Coligny, a count's daughter, fiercely defends Estelle's acknowledged seriousness and demands to know what crime such an earnest person could have possibly committed. The crowd readily sides with the calm Estelle, whispering that Prince Roland was always unreasonable and that Cecile actually caused more problems. Furious at the whispers, the Crown Prince shouts for silence and orders Estelle's exile, accusing her of criminally harassing Cecile out of jealousy. Prince Roland glares down with an arrogant, self-satisfied smirk plastered across his face. Unfazed by his furious bluster, Estelle merely stares back with dull, utterly exhausted eyes. She coldly thinks to herself that the harsh punishment is worth it if she never has to see his self-satisfied face again. Her sharp eyes narrow slightly as she fully accepts her sudden destitution and looming exile. Wondering where the queen is during this chaos, Estelle decides that staying at the academy wouldn't do her any good anyway. She recalls that Queen Elizabeth de Valier currently rules the country since the king passed away a few years prior. Her only son, Roland, unfortunately holds an infamous reputation as a foolish, narcissistic, and womanizing crown prince. The worried queen and queen dowager had specifically requested Estelle to become the queen consort to properly support the kingdom and balance the foolish heir. Taking this royal duty seriously, Estelle spent her days diligently studying at a desk while her strict instructor observed her progress. Recognizing her own genius, she realizes Roland deliberately arranged for the queen and queen dowager to recuperate at a distant hot spring so they could not intervene. Disgusted that his mind only works for petty schemes, she easily concludes the entire engagement annulment was perfectly calculated. Shrugging off the ultimate betrayal, she turns her back on the dramatic spectacle and mutters that it simply does not matter. Walking gracefully out of the grand hall, she decides it is time to pack her things and leave this life behind. She compares this drama to her past life, where she lived as an ordinary civil servant who entered an arranged marriage without ever experiencing romance or having children. A shadowy figure from her past addresses two men, Pascal and Daniel, stating he has high expectations for them both. She vividly remembers an arrogant man from her past telling her that a plain girl like her should be grateful to marry such a handsome man. Snapping back to the present, she faces the unyielding fury of her family as they call her a disgrace to the ducal house for letting the engagement get annulled. Cast out from her grand estate, she walks toward a waiting carriage while her younger brother apologizes tearfully. Her little brother watches her leave with a deeply pained expression, repeatedly murmuring how sorry he is. Holding a potted plant, Estelle smiles warmly and reassures Daniel that she will be fine, though he wishes he were more grown up to help her. Daniel blinks in mild confusion and points out the strange potted plant she actively chose to take with her. She softly explains that she picked up the budless rose from a trash heap during her first year and simply grew attached to it over time. Thanking him for his sincere concern, she tells him to contact her immediately if anything happens. As they finally part ways, a desperate final plea is made for her to please take care of herself out there. Carrying her modest belongings in a simple bag, she begins her solitary walk away from her former life. She successfully makes her way to the kingdom of Bruton, a longtime ally and neighbor to her homeland of Valier. Stepping fully into the new city streets, she takes a breath and realizes that after everything, she is finally free. Despite her newfound freedom, she glances around the unfamiliar architecture and wonders what she should actually do from here. Suddenly, a sharp, predatory eye narrows as a shadowy figure locks onto her vulnerable position. A group of shady figures begins to approach her, ominously commenting on her presence out on such a fine night. Surrounded by street thugs, she calmly deduces that the dangerous streets and her elegant dress have made her an obvious target. Peering curiously out the window, a woman wonders aloud if the stranger outside is genuinely trying to help her with nothing but a frying pan. A delicate hand carefully sets down a potted plant as a voice gently expresses appreciation for the gesture while still harboring a lingering hesitation. Holding her sturdy bag, a long-haired woman in a flowing cloak firmly warns that using such a mundane kitchen tool will only get the defender hurt instead. Eyes narrowing with unwavering resolve, she boldly steps forward and declares her intention to strike the assailants down herself. Unleashing a sudden burst of invisible magical force, the cloaked woman effortlessly blasts a burly thug backward through the air with bone-jarring kinetic impact. Chaos erupts in the narrow alleyway as multiple thugs are simultaneously launched into the air by rapid, unseen magical shockwaves. Trembling violently, a remaining thug gasps in sheer terror as he surveys his defeated comrades groaning on the cobblestones around the mysterious, glowing woman. Scrambling desperately to their feet, the humiliated men flee in absolute panic while screaming over their shoulders that they will definitely remember this utter defeat. Adjusting her grip on her frying pan, the rescued woman stammers her absolute awe at the stranger's incredible strength, though the cloaked savior humbly denies possessing any special power. Introducing herself with a cheerful smile, Monica Garnier admits she never even got a chance to swing her weapon, while her savior reveals her name is Estelle and graciously thanks Monica for her brave concern. A charming wooden sign proudly displays the inviting emblem of a local diner. The grand exterior of a traditional, multi-story building stands peacefully under the bright, clear sky. Bonding over a warm bowl of stew, Monica emphatically agrees that men simply cannot be trusted after listening to the heartbreaking revelation that Estelle's fiancé abruptly annulled their engagement. Estelle passionately confirms her mutual understanding of this bitter, universal truth regarding the cruelty of men. A melancholic flashback reveals that during her youthful days working as a humble waitress in another bustling town, Monica also endured a truly terrible and life-altering experience. During that vulnerable period of her life, the naive young woman crossed paths with an older, exceedingly wealthy merchant who appeared respectable and kind. Overcoming her initial anxieties about their significant age gap, she foolishly believed his tragic tales of profound loneliness since losing his wife and completely threw herself into a blinding romance. However, the very second she joyfully revealed she was pregnant, the merchant's gentle demeanor vanished and his cruel attitude drastically changed. Staring down at her with chilling apathy, he coldly apologized but flatly refused to acknowledge the existence of the unborn baby. Shattering her heart completely, the callous merchant sneered that he did not even know for certain if the child she carried was truly his own. Slapping his hand away in a spray of furious tears, a devastated and enraged Monica screamed that she had absolutely heard enough of his venomous lies. Furiously demanding that he never show his cowardly face to her again, she fiercely resolved to protect and raise her child entirely on her own. Fleeing her painful past, the determined single mother relocated to this quiet new town and successfully poured her heart into opening a cozy diner. Explaining that running a business entirely alone as a woman often makes people look down on her, Monica playfully asks Estelle a favor, revealing she had been actively thinking of hiring a strong guard. Desperately pleading for a stable position, Estelle eagerly volunteers for the job while proudly highlighting her excellent culinary skills. With a remarkably confident smile and a glowing, intimidating aura of raw magic, Estelle boldly declares that she is physically and magically stronger than most men. Delighted by this perfect arrangement, Monica claps her hands in sheer joy and graciously asks if Estelle would mind living and working right there at the diner, noting how much it would help them both. Sweetening the already generous deal, Monica reveals there is a comfortable extra room available upstairs and promises to pay the powerful mage a proper, fair wage for her services. Tears of overwhelming relief welling in her eyes, Estelle enthusiastically accepts the life-changing offer and shouts her profound, heartfelt thanks. Time peacefully passes as the morning sun casts a warm, golden glow over the bustling, successful exterior of the diner. A voice echoes warmly through the wooden halls, calling up the stairs to ask if a specific someone can come down to help. A close-up intimately reveals the delicate, refined facial features and elegantly flowing hair of the person being summoned from the upper floor. Adjusting her perfectly round glasses with a practiced flick of her wrist, the young woman brightly confirms she is ready to help out. Bustling with infectious energy, she leans forward and loudly calls out that she is immediately on her way down the stairs. Bursting energetically through the floral curtains in a pristine maid outfit, the disguised noble introduces herself to the patrons as Emma Garnier, apologizing profusely for keeping everyone waiting. Dark internal narration reveals her deep, paralyzing fear that if anyone were to discover she is secretly an exiled noble, this peaceful shop and their newfound life would be in catastrophic danger. To ruthlessly protect their sanctuary, she relies entirely on elaborate wigs and magical items to alter her eye color, lamenting that true transformation magic is exceedingly rare and far beyond her personal capabilities. A cheerful male coworker named Matt enthusiastically praises Emma's unparalleled brilliance, loudly demanding to know how she consistently comes up with such incredible ideas. Serving a steaming, incredibly fragrant dish, Emma beams with genuine pride and expresses her sheer gladness that her innovative culinary creations are considered so deeply delicious. While Monica proudly declares Emma to be an absolute genius, she playfully teases Matt about why he is sporting such an inexplicably smug expression over someone else's achievement. Emma silently reflects that in this rudimentary world where cooking merely involves basic grilling or boiling heavily seasoned with mundane salt and pepper, her clever invention of a soy sauce equivalent using soybeans became a massive, unprecedented hit. A bustling, chaotic line of eager customers proves the immense success of her culinary innovations, as soybeans yielded rich soy sauce and miso, while simple wheat flour allowed the miraculous creation of thick udon noodles. These profoundly rich, newly introduced Japanese-style comfort foods quickly grew incredibly popular, causing the humble diner's business to flourish far beyond their wildest expectations. A smiling, confident Matt expertly flips a heavy pan, clearly benefiting from the diner's massively enhanced culinary repertoire and bustling atmosphere. The cheerful, unstoppable trio of Monica, Matt, and Emma stand shoulder to shoulder in the busy kitchen, beautifully united by their shared success and hard work. Later that quiet evening, gazing lovingly at the diner's shadowy exterior, Monica expresses her deep, heartfelt gratitude to Estelle for everything she has miraculously accomplished. Monica tearfully admits that Estelle's unwavering presence has not only made the shop wildly successful, but has finally given her the profound peace of mind needed to safely face her impending childbirth. Completely overwhelmed with pure emotion, Monica sincerely calls her magical savior a true, living goddess of fortune. Chuckling warmly behind her round glasses, the brilliantly disguised Estelle playfully dismisses the incredibly high praise, gently telling Monica she is wildly exaggerating the truth. Sitting quietly in the peaceful, moonlit shadows, Estelle reflects with a soft smile that it was actually Monica who generously gave her a desperately needed place to truly belong. Surrounded by the warm smiles of Monica and Matt, a deeply moved Estelle reflects that this is the absolute happiest moment of her life. Having rarely felt familial love before, she deeply cherishes the profound warmth of her newfound home. A peaceful, utterly contented smile graces Estelle's face as she looks fondly at her cherished companions through her round spectacles. Returning her gentle gaze, Matt offers a soft, sincere smile and murmurs a heartfelt expression of his own gratitude. Time swiftly passes, and an anxious but deeply devoted Estelle carefully presses her ear against Monica's heavily pregnant belly. Beads of nervous sweat form on Estelle's face as she releases a tense groan, clearly overwhelmed by the incredibly stressful situation unfolding before her. Roused suddenly from her panicked sleep, a groggy Estelle blinks up at a distressed Monica hovering urgently over her bedside. Realization strikes like a terrifying lightning bolt as Estelle's eyes snap wide open behind her lenses, instantly understanding that the fateful moment has arrived. Panicking but fiercely determined, Matt urgently shouts for them to hold on while he desperately sprints out to fetch the doctor right away. Monica endures a grueling and agonizingly harrowing labor, prompting a grim doctor to issue a dire warning that the mother's life is in severe danger. Estelle gasps in sheer horror as the solemn physician suggests they may be completely forced to choose between saving the child or the mother. Tears welling rapidly in her terrified eyes, a desperate Estelle screams out Monica's name in agonizing, heartbreaking disbelief. Fighting bravely through unimaginable pain, a stubbornly resilient Monica weakly but firmly vows that she will absolutely give birth to her child. Sobbing helplessly beside the blood-stained bed, Estelle listens as her fading friend uses her absolute last ounces of strength to utter a final, desperate plea. After enduring 10 grueling hours of agonizing labor, the devastating silence of the room is finally broken by the piercing cries of newborn twins. Lying weakly against the pillows as her life rapidly fades, a pale Monica begs her dearest friend to look after her precious children. Cradling the fragile infants to her chest, a weeping Estelle fiercely promises to protect them even if it ultimately costs her own life. A peaceful, incredibly relieved smile touches Monica's pale lips as she breathes out a final, profound expression of everlasting gratitude. Estelle unleashes a heartbreaking wail of absolute agony as Monica peacefully passes away, leaving behind a solemn, tragic wish for her children's happiness. Refusing to let crushing grief consume her, a newly determined Estelle balances towering stacks of plates in the bustling diner, having absolutely no time to drown in sorrow. To keep their beloved and increasingly frantic shop safely afloat, Estelle responsibly hires a cheerful new worker named Sally to manage the immense workload. Balancing chaotic diner shifts with endless diaper changes, Estelle pours her entire heart into carefully and relentlessly raising the twin girls. 6 incredibly fast years peacefully pass by as the thriving diner continues to warmly welcome a steady, loyal stream of hungry customers. Pausing her busy shift, Emma politely listens as an elderly patron playfully suggests marriage and happily reveals her son's secret infatuation. Maintaining her flawless customer service smile, Emma gracefully accepts the kind compliment while expertly deflecting the romantic proposition. Striding briskly across the wooden floorboards, Emma internally reassures herself that she is perfectly content simply working at the vibrant, lively shop. A seated male patron glances over his shoulder, completely captivated by the disguised noblewoman's undeniable grace and tireless, inspiring work ethic. The cheerful patrons exchange amused smiles as they relax happily at the counter, thoroughly enjoying the warm, inviting atmosphere Emma masterfully cultivates. The lively ambience is suddenly and wonderfully interrupted by the energetic sound of 2 small pairs of boots bursting joyfully into the busy diner. Dropping to her knees with a radiant smile, Emma pulls the adorable twins, Coco and Mia, into a fierce and immensely loving hug. An older customer fondly observes the heartwarming reunion, warmly complimenting the young girls on growing as beautiful and bright as ever. Blushing with innocent, infectious delight, the identically dressed twins clasp their hands together in pure excitement at the charming compliment. Turning their bright, highly curious eyes toward their adoptive mother, the eager twins cheerfully demand to know what is going on. Scolding her with surprising maturity, the twins point out her patched clothes and demand she immediately report any potential romantic suitors. Stifling a genuine laugh, Emma listens as the selfless girls beg her to buy a new dress and find a sweetheart, promising to be perfectly good girls. Stepping into the lively conversation, a loyal patron gallantly declares that Emma remains absolutely charming regardless of her humble, patched attire. Adjusting her glasses with a highly confident smile, Emma firmly informs her daughters that she has absolutely no need for a lover when she has something far more important. Tilting their heads in adorable, wide-eyed confusion, the young girls innocently echo her bold statement and wonder what could possibly be more important. Looking down at them with overwhelming, boundless affection, Emma softly reveals that they are undoubtedly her most precious treasures. Standing tall and proud behind the wooden counter, she gazes around the bustling room and firmly adds the diner itself to her list of beloved treasures. A melancholic yet deeply grateful smile touches Emma's lips as she softly reflects on the incredible, painful sacrifice that directly built this cherished life. Remembering her fallen friend's agonizing final moments, Emma solemnly acknowledges the heavy, beautiful cost of bringing the twins safely into the world. Squeezing the girls gently, she internally reaffirms her sacred, unbreakable vow to protect the incredibly precious legacy that Monica entrusted to her care. A fierce, unbreakable maternal resolve hardens in Emma's eyes as she silently swears to fiercely protect their happiness against any incoming threat. Burying her face in their soft hair, she wraps both little girls in a deeply protective, profoundly emotional embrace that speaks far louder than words. The tender, emotional moment is abruptly shattered by an urgent, ringing shout from the busy kitchen demanding Emma's immediate attention. A visibly panicked coworker urgently begs Emma to intervene with a seemingly offended gentleman, prompting Emma to confidently take charge of the delicate situation. Smoothing down her apron with practiced, absolute professional calm, Emma boldly strides out into the dining area to personally confront the dissatisfied customer. Approaching the wooden table, Emma drops her gaze with a polite, deferential demeanor fully prepared to brilliantly defuse any rising tension. Emma stops dead in her tracks, utterly stunned into silence by the sudden, highly intense gaze of a remarkably handsome and imposing gentleman. Analyzing his striking posture and refined features, Emma's sharp instincts instantly deduce that despite his commoner's clothing, this mysterious man is undeniably a high-ranking noble. A bold menu layout captures the immediate attention of anyone looking closely at its contents. A bespectacled waitress smiles patiently as an exasperated customer complains that the unfamiliar menu items are just an elaborate gimmick to draw in unsuspecting patrons. The flustered noble quickly retracts his complaint while the smiling waitress apologizes, politely suggesting he try another establishment if their modest food offends his high-class palate. He stammers nervously in his defense, desperately trying to clarify that he simply could not understand what the strange dishes were. Leaning back comfortably in his wooden chair, the blonde noble looks up and curiously asks how she deduced his hidden social status. The waitress clears her throat with a polite ahem to prepare her incredibly blunt explanation. She points out that despite his commoner clothes, his arrogant bearing, unmistakable facial features, and extremely rare hair color completely give away his true noble identity. Suitably chastised, the noble apologizes for his rude behavior and promises to be more careful, sighing that he cannot do anything to hide his hair and face. Crossing his arms in sheer defeat, he closes his eyes and mutters to himself that this entire situation is incredibly troublesome. The waitress offers a gentle, reassuring smile, softly telling the tense man that he does not need to take the matter that seriously. She suddenly leans in uncomfortably close to inspect him, causing the flustered noble to jolt backward in total surprise. He sighs deeply to dismiss his creeping suspicion as mere imagination, secretly admitting he felt he had met her before because he could never forget a bold woman unafraid of nobles. A steaming cup of fresh coffee is unceremoniously placed on the table right in front of him. The noble sits perfectly still, staring intensely at the dark brew as it rests securely on its serving tray. He elegantly brings a silver spoon to his lips to carefully sample the steaming hot beverage. He instantly recoils in genuine pain, dramatically shouting that he has a cat's tongue and absolutely cannot handle the scalding heat. The waitress quickly covers her mouth with her hand, desperately trying to suppress a sudden giggle at his highly exaggerated reaction. Dropping her hand, she immediately asks if the drink was too hot while the embarrassed noble stammers that he is perfectly fine. Watching him recover his composure, she smiles warmly and thinks to herself that this strange man is quite amusing. He delicately wipes his mouth with a crisp napkin, prompting her to silently note that his refined manners are exactly as expected of a noble. Gazing intently at his pretty features, she realizes with a thrill that Coco and Mia would absolutely love such a remarkably handsome face. The tall noble gathers his discarded coat and gracefully stands up from the table, preparing to take his formal leave. A sudden flash of terrifying recognition strikes the waitress, making her pause mid-step as she notices something painfully familiar about his face. As he walks out the heavy wooden door, she forcefully dismisses the creeping dread as her imagination right before someone urgently calls out to Emma. A blonde woman rushes over frantically, demanding to know the identity of the gorgeous man because his hair and eye color look exactly like Coco and Mia. Emma trembles slightly in place, realizing with a rapidly sinking heart that the impossible resemblance is not just her wild imagination. Staring blankly into the distance, she confirms her worst fears that he looks exactly like Coco and Mia, wondering frantically who this mysterious man really is. A dramatic flashback transports the sprawling narrative 6 years into the past, showing the grand castle of the kingdom of Valier as someone furiously screams Roland's name. A furious noblewoman in a lavish, jewel-encrusted gown shouts in complete disbelief while 2 blindfolded royal guards stand silently behind her. She points an accusatory finger forward, demanding to know if it is truly possible that he broke off his long-standing engagement. Roland stands tall and solemn as the title card for Chapter 2 of the saga declares the Villainess became a single mother, while the furious woman asks if he ended things with Estelle. Maintaining a chillingly cold exterior, Roland flatly explains that Estelle was always deeply disrespectful toward him. The older woman furiously demands concrete proof of his wild accusations that Estelle relentlessly harassed Cecile out of pure jealousy. Roland averts his eyes and awkwardly rubs the back of his neck, visibly struggling to formulate a convincing response. His father furiously facepalms over his foolish son making Estelle his fiancée, while Roland fiercely defends himself by claiming the clever woman left no physical evidence but Cecile personally testified to the abuse. The furious patriarch orders Roland to bring the Baron's daughter at once so his mother can formally meet her, sarcastically assuring the boy that he isn't going to eat her. Sweating nervously, Roland tries to desperately stall when his commanding father declares he will take custody of Estelle and demands to know exactly where she is. Roland finally confesses that all contact was permanently lost after she went to a neighboring country, adding that she was subsequently disowned by Duke Leon. His elegant mother recoils in sheer, unadulterated horror, screaming at the top of her lungs to ask what he just said. The exhausted father furiously pinches the bridge of his nose, lamenting why he is surrounded by such absolute fools, even Leon. Realizing he absolutely cannot rely on his idiot son for anything, the weary father resolves to personally hear the matter out himself for the time being. The tense narrative shifts to a royal palace tea party later that same day, where the dramatic rumors continue to spread like wildfire among the elites. A dramatic Cecile cries fake tears to the other ladies, claiming that Lady Estelle is a villain who bullied her, plotted her kidnapping, and maliciously broke her mother's keepsake flowerpot. An elegant older woman sighs deeply into her fine porcelain teacup, brutally summarizing the disastrous situation by noting that an idiot chose an idiot. A royal investigator bows low in complete shame, offering his deepest apologies to his superiors because the missing Estelle has still not been found. He nervously promises his furious commander that his entire unit will continue to pour all available efforts into the ongoing search. Looking out over the sprawling kingdom, a shadowed figure mournfully whispers into the wind, begging to know where Estelle could possibly be hiding. The timeline jumps forward 6 full years into the future, landing squarely in the bustling, peaceful kingdom of Bruton. A set of heavy wooden tavern doors swings wide open as a bright, cheerful voice rings out to welcome a brand new patron. The bespectacled waitress, secretly hiding from her turbulent past, turns confidently from the wooden tavern bar to greet the unknown arrival. A waitress in a dark apron happily welcomes a customer into the establishment with a bright, warm smile. The handsome young man politely introduces himself to her as Frederick. Following their initial meeting, he starts coming to the shop frequently to enjoy their meals. The twin girls enthusiastically greet Frederick at the door, cheerfully declaring that he looks incredibly handsome again today. Emma approaches the seated noble and playful asks if he is just more fresh meat joining the superficial crowd of regulars who only come to see her. Frederick quietly closes his eyes and smiles in mild amusement at her blunt accusation. Taking a slow sip from his cup, he openly admits he cannot deny her popularity, leaving a confused Emma to ask what he is talking about. The bespectacled waitress covers her mouth in sheer bewilderment, quietly repeating the word popular to herself. Misunderstanding his compliment entirely, she strikes a proud pose and boldly declares complete confidence in her physical strength. A heavily blushing Frederick stammers a quick apology and awkwardly gestures to hand her back the shop's menu. He formally orders the chawanmushi and agedashi tofu, which Emma cheerfully promises to bring right away. Before she can walk off, Frederick nervously calls out Emma's name to ask her a quick question. Glancing back, she listens as he curiously asks if she makes the unusual tofu ingredient right here in the shop. Emma smiles brightly and confirms that she and Matt make the tofu together every single morning. Frederick remarks that the two of them must be close, prompting a confused Emma to wonder what he means by together. The waitress thoughtfully glances over her shoulder before walking away through the swinging wooden doors. A close-up reveals Emma's guarded expression as her sharp eyes narrow with deep, lingering suspicion. Observing the solitary man drinking from his mug, Emma silently wonders why a wealthy noble is eating at her humble shop instead of enjoying extravagant meals at his grand mansion. She leans cautiously against the wooden wall, her mind racing as she considers another glaring piece of the puzzle. Watching Frederick sit warmly with the smiling twins, Emma nervously acknowledges his striking visual resemblance to Coco and Mia. Seeing the identical joyful smiles shared between the noble and the little girl weighs heavily on her anxious mind. She desperately tries to dismiss the terrifying thought, frantically telling herself that the resemblance must be nothing more than her wild imagination. Carrying a wooden bucket through the doorway, Emma admits she tried her best to ignore the glaring truth staring her in the face. A few months after he first started visiting the shop, Frederick urgently asks Emma for a private moment. Placing a solemn hand over his chest, he apologizes sincerely if his sudden confession comes as a terrible shock. Standing tall in the open breeze, Frederick looks Emma directly in the eye and plainly states his belief that Coco and Mia are his sisters. Emma's eyes widen in absolute silence as the dreadful confirmation finally shatters her fragile wall of denial. A bright full moon hangs ominously in the night sky as Emma mentally accepts that she knew this fateful day would eventually come. The heavy silence settles over the quiet, moonlit exterior of the Grand Manor building. Frederick gently pleads for her to listen as he prepares to explain the complicated family truth. Taking a steadying breath, the young nobleman clarifies that the twin girls are actually his half-sisters. His sharp eyes narrow slightly as he carefully watches Emma's calm reaction to the startling secret. When he asks why she isn't surprised, Emma solemnly admits she had a gut feeling from the very first time she laid eyes on him. She confesses that his facial features looked so incredibly similar to the children that she immediately suspected their hidden connection. Acknowledging her sharp intuition, Frederick requests to formally confirm her exact relationship to a specific woman. He holds his breath and asks her directly about her mysterious connection to Monica Garnier. Emma reveals she is Monica's younger sister, sadly beginning to explain what happened right after Monica gave birth to Coco and Mia. A single, heavy tear gathers silently in the corner of Emma's deeply mournful eye. The tear finally breaks free, sliding slowly down her cheek as the painful memory fully resurfaces. Standing stiffly beside his table, Emma bluntly tells the somber nobleman that her beloved sister passed away. Frederick flinches violently in his chair, visibly struck by the tragic confirmation of Monica's untimely death. He quickly apologizes for forcing her to recall such painful memories, but Emma gently reassures him that it is not his fault. Frederick covers his mouth with a trembling hand, quietly noting that the two sisters must have been incredibly close. Emma fondly remembers her late sister as the absolute most trustworthy person in the entire world. Stepping forward to finally reveal his own full identity, the young man officially introduces himself as Frederick Lafayette. He drops a massive bombshell on the confused waitress, announcing that he is a ruling duke of the Valier kingdom. Emma stares back in complete and utter bewilderment, repeating the prestigious title of Duke Lafayette. She stammers that the duke was supposed to be a much older man, prompting Frederick to sadly explain that his father recently passed away and he just inherited the title. An exposition reveals that Frederick's father raised him alone with extreme, worrying affection after his mother passed away when he was just an infant. As the late-born, precious only son, Frederick was heavily sheltered and strictly educated by private tutors instead of ever being sent away to a normal school. A somber narrative reveals that the young Frederick was raised in strict isolation, kept completely sheltered from the outside world. He solemnly explains that on his deathbed, his sickly father suddenly confessed to having another child. Frederick recounts his father's deep regret over falsely accusing Monica Garnier of infidelity, foolishly believing an old man like himself could not possibly father a child. He bitterly admits his father should have known better, as the earnest woman was never the type to lie for money. A dark shadow falls over the memory as Frederick reveals she vanished shortly after the terrible confrontation. He firmly believes his father was an absolute fool for driving her away. Clarifying his stance, the young duke insists he is not trying to defend his father's actions, though the old man deeply regretted his grave mistake. Emma lowers her gaze, softly agreeing that Monica was an incredibly honest woman. She fondly remembers her late sister as the most earnest person she ever knew. Frederick listens in respectful silence, his handsome features softening with quiet understanding. He explains that his father immediately launched a search for Monica, but was severely limited because he had never publicly acknowledged his commoner lover. Emma tightly grips her coffee mug, expressing quiet relief at finally knowing the true identity of the twins' blood relatives. Anxious about her own fate, Emma silently wonders what will happen to her now that Frederick has taken over the search. Frederick reveals he scoured the land for his father's posthumous children until a rumor surfaced about a restaurant housing kids with highly unusual hair colors. He thoroughly investigated the surrounding area and the kingdom of Bruton before finally tracking them down to this very town. Discovering that a proprietress named Emma Garnier was raising the twins instead of Monica, he decided to frequent the restaurant to secretly judge her character. Emma's eyes widen in sudden realization as all of his strange, observant behavior finally makes perfect sense. Frederick warmly praises her unwavering dedication, noting how she always greets every customer with a bright smile regardless of their social standing. He expresses genuine admiration for the meticulous care she takes to ensure her patrons dine in absolute comfort. A thoroughly confused Emma tilts her head, genuinely asking if such basic hospitality isn't just a matter of course. The noble shakes his head, insisting that running a business while raising children is incredibly difficult, and commends her excellent treatment of both the twins and her employees. Frederick looks at her with deep respect, declaring her a wonderful mother for raising Coco and Mia into such kind, upstanding girls. A single, overwhelming tear escapes Emma's eye as the sheer weight of his validation crashes over her. Covering her face, she breaks down crying and asks her late sister if she is finally doing a good job as a mother. The heartfelt moment abruptly shatters when Frederick firmly states that Coco and Mia must come to his house, as he cannot abandon members of his ducal family. Emma freezes in sheer terror, the devastating words paralyzing her in place. Leaping from her chair in a desperate panic, the terrified waitress screams at him not to take her precious girls away. A highly flustered Frederick throws his hands up, frantically begging her to calm down and insisting she has completely misunderstood his intentions. The wooden door slowly creaks open as a sleepy Coco and Mia step into the room, rubbing their tired eyes to ask what happened. The twins immediately notice their mother's tears, their sleepy expressions instantly shifting into protective glares directed at the noble. Standing fiercely in front of Emma, the angry girls declare that they absolutely hate anyone who makes their mother cry, no matter how handsome he is. Sweating nervously under their intense hostility, Frederick desperately begs the protective children not to misunderstand the situation. He quickly clarifies that he has absolutely no intention of ever separating them from their beloved mother. Emma blinks through her lingering tears, her voice trembling slightly as she asks if he is truly telling the truth. The young Duke offers a reassuring smile and firmly promises that he will not tear their family apart. Safe and reassured, the exhausted twins fall fast asleep together under the warm blankets. Since the late dukes will granted the twins' inheritance rights, Emma agreed to temporarily stay at the ducal mansion solely to complete the necessary legal procedures for their future. The loyal tavern employees confidently beat their chests, happily promising to protect the shop while she is away. 1 week later, an elegant horse-drawn carriage finally arrives at the sprawling Lafayette estate. The heavy iron gates of the Grand Manor swing open to welcome the returning lord and his new guests. The majestic carriage slowly rolls across the pristine cobblestone courtyard of the noble residence. Twin doors open to reveal a breathtaking, chandelier-lit entrance hall lined with perfectly positioned servants. Staring up at the sheer scale of the massive architecture, an overwhelmed voice completely mistakes the extravagant mansion for a royal castle. Emma stares in total disbelief, heavily admitting she never imagined the estate would be this obscenely grand even in the royal capital. Small, hesitant feet step carefully down from the secure safety of the carriage. Coco and Mia nervously peek their heads out to inspect their intimidating new surroundings. Recovering her composure, Emma steps forward to politely thank the household for such a remarkably warm welcome. A row of uniformed maids gasp loudly, their faces lighting up with uncontrollable excitement. The ecstatic servants squeal in absolute delight over the lovely, well-mannered girls, noting with joy that they look exactly like the master did when he was a young boy. An older butler and a senior maid watch the chaotic celebration with mild, endearing surprise. Admiring onlookers gasp at the sight of a beautiful woman, captivated by her ability to carry herself with such elegance. Whispering among themselves, they wonder if the graceful woman is a nobleman's daughter, noting the presence of her companions Coco, Mia, and Emma. Startled by the sudden attention, Emma glances upward with a look of mild surprise behind her spectacles. A welcoming hand extends toward her, gesturing for her to step forward into her new life. The grand entrance of the Lafayette home looms ahead, opening its doors to receive the new arrivals. A row of uniformed maids stands in stunned silence, their jaws dropping in unison at the unfolding scene. Overwhelmed by the sight, the maids whisper that seeing a smile from their master is a truly rare occurrence. Brushing off the butler's reminder to wait inside, the master insists he simply couldn't wait any longer to greet them. Presenting the head butler, Philippe, the master introduces him to Lady Emma, Lady Coco, and Lady Mia as a vital pillar of the household. Stepping forward with profound respect, Philippe warmly awaits their arrival from the very bottom of his heart. Emma marvels at her luxurious new room, where the master reveals he has already prepared clothes for her inside the closet. Coco and Mia's eyes sparkle with absolute joy as the master generously encourages them to feel free to wear the beautiful dresses. Gesturing to the opulent surroundings, he warmly invites his guests to please make themselves entirely at home. Overjoyed by their grand new environment, Coco and Mia excitedly explore the expansive, sunlit room. Bounding across the floor, the two girls leap onto the fluffy bed with delighted squeals. Emma firmly orders them to wait, ignoring their disappointed groans as they press against the balcony glass. Pausing mid-thought, a sudden realization flashes across Emma's bespectacled eyes. One of the girls asks if Mama brought the rose bush, admitting it feels lonely without it even though Sally is watering it. Hoping for a solution, they wonder aloud if they could ask Frederick to have the plant brought over because they miss it. Agreeing they can ask him later, Emma cheerfully instructs the girls to finish unpacking their things first. Monica affectionately praises the adorable children, noting with a bright smile that they are growing up wonderfully. Reflecting on her past life, Emma acknowledges that while things didn't happen as wished, her impossible dream of becoming a mother finally came true. Closing her eyes with deep emotion, she silently expresses how truly grateful she is for this miraculous second chance. Pulling Coco and Mia into a fierce embrace, she vows to do her absolute best for their sake. Holding them tightly against her chest, she dedicates herself entirely to the happiness of these children and to Estelle's sake. Daphne, a maid of the Lafayette ducal household, clasps her hands in pure delight as she calls the moment wonderful. Radiating excitement, Daphne confidently assures Emma that the master will surely be captivated. Emma graciously accepts the compliments, thanking them for allowing her to be dressed in such beauty. Looking breathtaking, Emma wears a stunning, low-cut white gown paired with a massive jeweled pendant. While her daughters cheer yay over Frederick's gifts, a flustered Emma panics that the dress neckline is cut way too low. Blushing fiercely, she nervously clutches the fabric of her bodice to cover her exposed chest. Staring into the expansive closet, she realizes that calling this massive collection of dresses a mere gift is a vast understatement. A beautifully ornate jewelry box sits open, overflowing with glittering pearls and flawless diamonds. Sighing heavily, Emma admits she can't accept such luxury items, but knows taking them off now would be incredibly rude. Examining her stunning reflection in the tall mirror, she lightly touches her cheek in complete disbelief. A gentle, confident smile finally graces her lips as she fully embraces her breathtaking transformation. Standing proudly beside her, Coco and Mia beam with sheer joy at their mother's radiant appearance. Revealing how restlessly the master paced the library all morning, Daphne explains he has been eagerly waiting for Lady Emma's arrival. Catching her off guard, Daphne enthusiastically praises Lady Emma for having such incredibly refined speech. Sweating nervously after nearly giving herself away, Emma quickly claims she developed her speech while working at a noble's manor. Hearing that the master was impatiently pacing all over the mansion just for her leaves Emma completely bewildered. Daphne bluntly clarifies that his anxious anticipation was entirely focused on Emma, not Coco and Mia. Giggling into her hands, the maid finds the master's obvious romantic desperation incredibly amusing. Observing the situation, Emma bluntly realizes that the children are being completely ignored in this dynamic. The grand exterior of the Lafayette estate stands tall, its majestic architecture gleaming beneath the clouds. Approaching the dining table, Frederick formally excuses himself while Emma thanks him for the generous invitation. Flashing a brilliant, charming smile, Frederick happily declares that he has been waiting for her. Gesturing warmly to the grand dining hall, he firmly assures Emma that this mansion is her home now. Staring up at him in awe, Emma is completely captivated by his sincere declaration and striking presence. Startled by her breathtaking appearance, Frederick blushes furiously and aggressively covers his face to hide his intense embarrassment. Blushing fiercely, Frederick admits he couldn't help but get nervous because she looks so incredibly beautiful. Shocked by the compliment, Emma frantically wonders if her elegant new outfit is truly too immodest. Gazing at her with absolute adoration, he declares that while she is always lovely, today she is especially enchanting. Frederick insists that any man alive would find it completely impossible to look away from her radiant beauty. Startled by the sudden romantic tension, the background maids drop a silver tray and gasp in horror as it shatters. Dropping to their knees in a blind panic, the flustered maids bow their heads and scream their deepest apologies. Smiling warmly, Emma graciously thanks Lord Frederick and playfully notes that he is exceptionally skilled at flattering women. Laughing softly at her teasing, Frederick rubs his cheek with a wonderfully sheepish and charming smile. Stepping forward with crisp, perfectly polished shoes, the head butler Philippe calmly interrupts the moment to address Lady Emma. Philippe formally urges her to accept Frederick's feelings, calling it an absolute miracle since it is the very first time he has ever seen the master genuinely praise a woman. Completely flustered by his butler's blunt honesty, Frederick waves his hands frantically and begs Emma to forgive him while insisting he is truly honored. Emma simply closes her eyes and smiles with profound gentleness, softly reassuring him that it is perfectly all right. Her breathtaking smile completely lights up the room, casting an ethereal and captivating aura around her elegant figure. Struck entirely speechless, Frederick gasps sharply as an unfamiliar, piercing emotion suddenly grips his chest. Clutching his tailored coat, he stares at her in wide-eyed shock and frantically wonders if this overwhelming sensation is the legendary feeling of falling in love. He feels his heart racing wildly against his ribs, unable to tear his mesmerized gaze away from her. Frederick lowers his head slightly, his glasses glinting as he tries to process the sudden, intense romantic impact. Sweating nervously, the utterly bewildered Duke seriously questions if he might actually be feeling physically unwell. Sometime later, Emma reflects that the inheritance meeting was postponed, so Frederick thoughtfully suggested Coco and Mia receive private tutors in the meantime. Watching the girls joyfully practice martial training alongside their academics, Emma expresses immense gladness that they are staying active and spending each day so happily. A maid informs Emma that her potted plant has safely arrived, prompting Emma to deeply thank Frederick for taking such good care of them alongside organizing the tutors. The beaming maid insists it is a great honor, revealing that all the servants absolutely adore them and secretly hope they stay at the estate forever. Leaning casually against the balcony pillar, Frederick suddenly reveals that every single one of the hired tutors was utterly astonished by Coco and Mia. Startled by this unexpected praise, Emma listens intently as Frederick explains the educators had never seen such incredibly talented children. He notes their flawless manners are fit for the royal court, which is highly suspicious since commoner children are rarely educated this thoroughly in high society. Flashing bright peace signs, Coco and Mia proudly declare to the Duke that they learned absolutely everything from their wonderful mama. Turning a sharp, penetrating gaze toward Emma, Frederick directly demands to know where she managed to acquire such extensive, elite knowledge. Feeling the dangerous sting of his question, Emma nervously lies that she simply enjoys studying and taught herself by imitating the nobles while working as a lowly servant. Heavy drops of sweat roll down Emma's face as she waits in agonizing suspense to see if he will buy her desperate excuse. Frederick narrows his eyes thoughtfully, silently analyzing her highly improbable claim of being a mere self-taught servant girl. On the ominous day of the inheritance, Daphne pulls Lady Emma aside and solemnly begs her to please be incredibly careful. Walking through the grand estate, Daphne warns that many of the master's greedy relatives are furious about the vast inheritance going to Coco and Mia. Emma sincerely thanks Daphne for the critical warning, her eyes hardening with fierce, unwavering protective resolve for her vulnerable daughters. Meanwhile, scheming nobles whisper treacherously about Crown Prince Roland being disinherited and fleeing alongside his fiancée, Lady Cecile. The plotting aristocrats eagerly wonder if their ducal house should ruthlessly seize this chaotic political chance to serve Her Majesty the Queen. They sneer in wicked agreement, the sharp clicks of their polished shoes echoing ominously against the cold marble floor. Frederick glares viciously from the shadows, his sharp eyes tracking the treasonous whispers circulating among his power-hungry family members. Entering the grand meeting hall, Emma and the girls freeze as they are instantly subjected to the furious, judging glares of the seated relatives. Swallowing nervously, Emma realizes Daphne was absolutely right about the suffocating, hostile tension poisoning the atmosphere. Desperate to shield her daughters from the venomous crowd, Emma politely asks the butler to watch the children in another room, which he immediately accepts. Frederick stands up with terrifying authority, his sheer commanding presence instantly silencing the arrogant murmurs across the sprawling room. Taking his rightful seat at the head of the heavy wooden table, Frederick prepares his documents while Emma bravely sits across from the hostile assembly. A confident, highly predatory smile ghosts across Frederick's handsome face as he silently dares his treacherous relatives to make a move. One furious relative violently breaks the silence, accusing the gold-digging woman of cowardly hiding behind the children to steal their wealth. Another noble furiously demands respect, sparking massive outrage by reminding the table that these children undeniably carry the late Duke's royal blood. Sneering with absolute disgust, an angry relative demands to know who would ever be foolish enough to believe the lies of a low-born commoner. Shouting over the rising chaos, the noble violently demands proof of lineage, refusing to accept her simply because of the Duke's personal invitation. Just as the relative screams about handing vast wealth to mere children, Frederick violently slams his hand on the table and roars that they have said enough. Frederick's eyes narrow into a lethal, terrifyingly cold glare that instantly freezes the blood of every single aristocrat in the room. Standing tall, Frederick roars that he personally confirmed her story using his father's words, warning that anyone who doubts her is officially defying the head of the Lafayette house. The hostile relatives sweat and grimace in absolute terror at his crushing authority, completely silenced as Frederick firmly anchors Lady Emma's untouchable status. Despite the harsh insults thrown her way, the woman answered calmly, showcasing the true dignity of nobility. Her serene composure demonstrates a level of grace that far surpasses anyone else present in the grand room. The atmosphere immediately shifts as a man prepares to read his father's will, prompting a shocked gasp regarding a common woman. Reading from the document, Frederick reveals that the majority of the estate passes to him, with a portion for the late Duke's twin daughters and the rest distributed at his own discretion. Seeking validation for his sweeping authority, Frederick directly questions the legal counselor about the accuracy of these terms. The counselor firmly confirms his role in drafting the will, reiterating that the late Duke explicitly entrusted the entire division of the inheritance to Lord Frederick's judgment. Drawing the ultimate conclusion from the counselor's testimony, Frederick prepares to deliver his final, crushing verdict to the greedy family members. Staring them down with unyielding authority, Frederick declares that he alone decides exactly how and to whom the vast inheritance will be distributed. A sharply dressed man recoils in sheer, trembling horror as the devastating reality of his immediate financial ruin sets in. Shock waves ripple across the table as the assembled relatives freeze in absolute panic at their sudden disinheritance. Delivering the final blow, Frederick ruthlessly informs the indicated family members that they will receive absolutely nothing and orders them to leave the premises immediately. Panicking and backpedaling desperately, the disinherited relatives plead that they would never oppose Lord Frederick and claim it was all a terrible misunderstanding. Frantically trying to save themselves from ruin, they beg someone to speak up, questioning if they truly said anything that offensive. A spectacled woman smiles knowingly, entirely unfazed by the pathetic, groveling desperation of the ousted nobility. Refusing to offer them any salvation, she casually states she has nothing to add and fully supports His Grace's harsh decree. The defeated relatives angrily click their tongues and trudge out of the grand hall in bitter, undeniable disgrace. With the room finally cleared of pests, Frederick politely apologizes for the disturbance and refocuses the discussion on the true matter at hand. The bespectacled woman peers closely at the documents, completely staggered by the vast sums of wealth allocated directly for the children. Acknowledging her disbelief, Frederick praises the legacy of the Lafayette house, noting how the late Duke always prioritized his people's needs. He elaborates that the Duke placed his subjects above his own personal comfort, earning their deep love and allowing the land to flourish beautifully. Drawing a bitter comparison, he notes that the Leon Dukes selfishly raised taxes solely to fund their own indulgent lifestyles. The woman named Emma holds her head in profound distress, admitting that merely remembering those dark times gives her a severe headache. Frederick offers his sincere apologies for the immense suffering she was forced to go through in the past. The sudden sound of echoing footsteps interrupts their somber reflection as an unexpected guest approaches the room. Looking up with a gentle smile, Frederick announces that there is someone highly important he would like her to meet. Startled by the sudden introduction, Emma turns her attention toward the newcomer while Frederick politely asks if the arrangement is all right. Frederick introduces the arrival as Count Joseph de Maistre, praising him as a truly brilliant jurist, which elicits a shocked gasp from Emma. As Frederick reveals his intention to appoint the Count as the children's legal guardian, Emma enters a state of internal panic, realizing how bad this situation truly is. Peering through her glasses with wide-eyed shock, Emma stammers that he startled her, barely able to process the identity of the man standing before her. She is completely overwhelmed by the startling revelation that Count Joseph is the absolute spitting image of a figure from her past. Emma realizes with rising dread that this man is the spitting image of her first love and that he personally knows Estelle, predicting a massive commotion. The narrative aggressively shifts back 8 years in time, plunging into a vivid flashback of Joseph's intense youth. A young, sharply dressed Joseph is flatly told by a peer that he is far too serious for his own good. Entering Chapter 4's timeline, a fiercely stern Joseph orders his classmates to improve themselves, warning that their academic neglect hurts everyone else. An arrogant student immediately threatens Joseph with a good punch, telling him to shut up and stop acting like hot stuff just because he can study. Before the violent heir of House Edgrants can throw a punch, the elegant Lady Estelle smoothly intervenes, reminding him of his recent engagement. The aggressive student instantly backs down with a panicked apology the moment he recognizes the stunning daughter of the Duke of Leon. Estelle stands composed and graceful before the humbled aggressor while a silent, observant Joseph watches the scene unfold from the sidelines. Framed by beautiful blossoms, Estelle casts a warm, incredibly radiant smile that silently captivates everyone standing around her. A young Joseph stands absolutely speechless, his previously stern demeanor melting away as he stares intently at her natural grace. He watches in quiet awe as Estelle's elegant figure turns and peacefully walks away through the bright, sunlit courtyard. Behind his glasses, Joseph's stoic expression softens into a look of profound, lingering admiration for the noble girl who effortlessly saved him. Snapping back to the present reality, a slightly flustered Joseph brushes his hair and humbly excuses his momentary lapse in concentration. Recovering his composure, Joseph explains that back in their academy days, he shared a class with the strikingly beautiful Lady Estelle de Leon. He passionately elaborates that she was far more than just a pretty face, describing her as incredibly strong, intelligent, and fiercely resilient. He recalls how she was a woman overflowing with genuine compassion, always willing to help someone in need even when it was highly inconvenient for her. Looking out fondly at the memory, Joseph admits that she even helped him once, forever cementing her as the untouchable target of his deep admiration. A lingering, wistful silence fills the room as Joseph quietly reflects on the profound impact Estelle had on his formative years. Standing confidently beside Frederick, Joseph openly confesses that the brilliant Lady Estelle of Lynn must have undoubtedly been his very first love. A somber look crosses his handsome face as he solemnly references the tragic moment when the Crown Prince completely annulled their high-profile engagement. Hearing that she remarkably resembles a certain duke's striking red-haired daughter, Lady Emma maintains a polite facade. She gently brushes off the comparison by noting that her own eyes and hair are completely different. Behind her strained smile, Emma internally panics as she realizes Count Joseph's terrifyingly sharp intuition might expose her. Desperately gripping her dress, she frantically tries to figure out how to talk her way out of this dangerous situation. Observing the tense exchange, Frederick silently watches Emma's subtle reactions with a quiet, contemplative gaze. His sharp eyes narrow slightly, carefully scrutinizing the nervous woman standing before him for any hidden tells. Recovering her composure, Emma formally introduces herself as Lady Garnier, the mother of Coco and Mia, claiming she is merely the younger sister of their late mother, Monica. The men accept this explanation, reasoning that her uncanny resemblance to the Duke's daughter must be a mere coincidence. Standing tall with his arms firmly crossed, Count Joseph observes the conversation with an unreadable, stoic expression. Breaking the tension, Joseph lightly dismisses the impossible idea that the noble Lady Estelle would be here, prompting Frederick's agreeable nod. Exhaling a silent breath of relief, Emma secretly rejoices that she successfully dodged their dangerous suspicions. The heavy doors suddenly burst open as a loud, cheerful cry for their mother echoes through the grand room. Little Coco and Mia rush into the room, their faces etched with deep concern as they frantically ask if anyone was being mean to her. Clenching her tiny fists with fierce determination, one of the girls bravely declares that she will never forgive anyone who dares to be nasty to their mother. Hearing her daughter's fierce loyalty, Emma's anxious expression completely melts away into a look of profound, tender warmth. Kneeling down to comfort them, Emma sweetly assures the girls that she is perfectly fine because they are always there to protect her. Towering silently in the background, Count Joseph and Frederick watch the touching familial reunion with softened, respectful expressions. Noticing the men staring, Emma cautiously asks if something is wrong, prompting a slightly flustered denial from Joseph. She then turns back to her beloved daughters to formally introduce their prestigious new guests. Gesturing toward the tall jurist, Emma explains that Joseph will be the one responsibly managing the inheritance money they are set to receive. The little girl's eyes sparkle with absolute joy upon hearing about the money, immediately wondering if they can finally buy their mother a beautiful new dress. Innocently exposing their frugal lifestyle, the children reveal that even when Emma's dresses rip, she simply sews them back up to wear again. As the girls loudly broadcast that her patch dresses are a sacrifice for their future and the reason she lacks a husband, a mortified Emma desperately wishes the ground would swallow her. Blushing furiously at their brutally honest chatter, she silently screams that this situation has become far too embarrassing to endure. The girls proudly conclude their innocent rant by declaring their mother looks absolutely amazing when dressed up, drawing an amused smile from Frederick. Breaking his usual serious demeanor, Count Joseph lets out a booming, hearty laugh at the children's charming honesty. Flustered by the unexpected joy, a blushing Frederick stammers slightly while trying to maintain his noble composure. Deeply moved by the display, Frederick gently commends Lady Emma for being such a truly wonderful and selfless mother to the girls. Overwhelmed by the unexpected praise, Emma buries her burning face in her hands to hide her immense embarrassment. Leaning in closer, Frederick softly adds that she is also a deeply beautiful woman, leaving the compliment lingering in the warm air. Watching the heartwarming interaction unfold, Joseph offers a rare, genuinely tender smile from behind his glasses. However, Frederick's momentary amusement quickly fades, replaced once again by the solemn, heavy weight of his noble duties. Standing quietly together, Emma and Frederick watch Count Joseph's imposing figure stride purposefully down the grand, sunlit hallway. Gripping his hand thoughtfully, Frederick silently questions if he made a critical mistake in choosing Joseph for this sensitive task. Turning his attention back to his companion, Frederick plainly asks Emma for her honest assessment of Count Joseph. Emma confidently expresses her deep trust in Joseph, praising his serious nature as the perfect shield to protect Coco and Mia's future. Pleased by her approval, Frederick agrees that Joseph has always been an exceptionally capable man driven by an unshakable sense of justice. With a slight, playful smirk, Frederick casually reveals that the stern jurist is actually incredibly popular among women. Emma blinks in genuine surprise, tilting her head as she tries to process this unexpected piece of gossip. Recovering quickly, Emma politely concedes that Joseph does appear to be both highly competent and undeniably charming. Frederick immediately seizes upon her words with a knowing look, teasingly asking if she truly believes that. Leaning into her curiosity, Emma hesitantly asks if the highly sought-after Count is still currently unmarried. Frederick quickly flips the question, sharply asking if Joseph's marital status is something that genuinely interests her. Seeing his sudden intensity, Emma flinches slightly, frantically wondering if she accidentally said something wrong to upset him. Before the awkward tension can fully settle, Frederick cuts through the silence by noting there is another pressing matter. Referencing an unspoken issue from earlier, Frederick fixes her with a deadly serious glare and requests a strictly private conversation. Emma's breath catches in her throat as the heavy implication of his words finally registers, her glasses glinting under the dim light. The narrative shifts away from the bright afternoon, plunging into the heavy, secretive shadows of that fateful night. Sitting rigidly in a dimly lit private parlor, Emma nervously addresses Lord Frederick as he stares solemnly out the grand window. The oppressive silence of the room stretches on for agonizingly long moments, thick with unspoken accusations and dangerous secrets. Finally breaking the unbearable tension, Frederick formally apologizes for deliberately keeping her waiting in the quiet room. With a heavy heart and downcast eyes, Emma quietly dismisses his apology, bracing herself for the inevitable confrontation. Gripping her elegant teacup with trembling fingers, Emma weakly reiterates her defensive lie that she is simply Coco and Mia's kin. Pressing his advantage, Frederick coldly states that any hidden facts regarding the inheritance could drastically affect the children's future. Narrowing his eyes with predatory focus, Frederick prepares to tear down the fragile web of lies she has constructed. Sitting across from her trembling form, he drops all pretenses and demands that she tell him the absolute truth. Backed into a corner with her children's futures at stake, Emma swallows her immense fear and finally begins her fateful confession. Staring directly into his eyes, she sheds her false identity and definitively reveals herself as the long-lost Lady Estelle de Leon. Absorbing the staggering revelation, Frederick quietly acknowledges the truth as the dark, imposing silhouette of the estate looms outside. Frederick solemnly recounts the tragic history he knows, mentioning a devastating annulment and a forced exile to a cold, foreign land. Looking upon the ruined noblewoman with profound pity, Frederick softly murmurs that her life has truly been a cruel, unforgiving tale. Bowing her head in deep shame, Estelle sincerely apologizes for deceiving him and desperately begs that the innocent people at the inn be spared from any fallout. A blonde man begs to bear any punishment alone to spare a cast-out duke's daughter, but the woman gently assures him he bears no guilt. Sitting across from him at a small table, the woman expresses her profound relief that he is safe. Beside the window, a nervous, bespectacled woman named Monica politely stammers her thanks for the reassurance. The blonde man looks stunned before hesitantly asking if he might be allowed to remain at the sides of Coco and Mia. The bespectacled woman immediately validates his place, firmly stating of course he can stay since he is their irreplaceable mother. Even with her blessing, the blonde man crosses his arms and looks away, his expression heavy with lingering doubt. Another flamboyant man suddenly interjects that her former fiancé must have been entirely blind to cruelly break an engagement with such a remarkable woman, noting that the fiancé was drawn to someone else while the woman herself admits she never truly loved him. Glancing over his shoulder with a soft smile, the blonde man begins to confess that he finds this development rather unexpected. The bespectacled woman looks on calmly as the man finishes, declaring the broken engagement to be rather welcome news. Clutching his chest as his heart races too often lately, he admits to experiencing entirely unfamiliar, intense palpitations. Smiling serenely with his eyes closed, he explains he never had heart problems before this, marveling at how she gave her all to a fiancé she did not even love. Gazing intently at the bespectacled woman sitting diligently at her desk, he notes that such phenomenal effort and devotion are truly rare. Visibly moved, the woman reveals that no one has ever said such validating things to her, finally feeling that her hard work deserves to be acknowledged. Tears spilling from beneath her glasses, she emphasizes that absolutely no one had ever recognized her struggles until this very moment. Overcome with emotion, she tearfully tells Lord Frederick that he is far too skilled at making her cry. Staring down with a somber expression, Lord Frederick quietly replies that causing her tears was never his intent. Brushing her tears away, she softly murmurs that she simply wants to see him smile. Overwhelmed by her sincerity, Lord Frederick begins to respond but is cut off by the sheer weight of the moment. Beaming radiantly, the bespectacled woman starts to voice a heartfelt wish, though her words trail off into a warm, hopeful silence. A quiet, contemplative pause settles between them as the two stand completely still, absorbing the profound emotional shift. Startled out of the silence, a sudden shocked exclamation shatters the peaceful atmosphere. Acknowledging her brave facade, Lord Frederick gently offers his shoulder for her to lean on whenever she wishes, prompting her to confess that she feels much calmer now. Questioning if she has truly never had anyone to rely on, he listens as she admits her complete inability to trust or depend on others. Staring blankly ahead, she confirms she has never had such a supportive person in her life, though a lingering doubt makes her reconsider. Pivoting the deeply personal conversation, he boldly asks if she has ever truly experienced the feeling of being in love. Looking entirely detached, she truthfully admits she does not even understand what romantic love is, declaring that the only love that matters is her fierce devotion to Coco and Mia. Swearing to do absolutely anything within her power, she waits as he seriously notes that there is something specific he must ask of her. Looking out toward the imposing royal palace of Valier, the man asks if she knows of the current political turmoil, explaining that the Queen tried to mold Crown Prince Roland and his lover, Lady Cecile, into suitable rulers. Conceding that the royal training must have been incredibly difficult, he grimly reveals that the Queen's ambitious plan did not go well at all. Swinging a heavy sword in grueling conditions, the disgraced Prince Roland was ordered to serve as a common soldier on the harsh, unforgiving frontier. Meanwhile, struggling under the immense pressure of queenly training, Lady Cecile was sent to a convent but quickly gave up and cowardly fled. Prince Roland had endured all the agonizing frontier torments solely for Cecile's sake, but upon hearing of her selfish escape, his spirit broke completely. Left utterly speechless by the betrayal, Prince Roland deserted the army and remains missing to this day. Because Roland is the Queen's only son, Her Majesty made the drastic decision to disinherit him entirely and seeks to name a brand new crown prince or princess. The narrative abruptly shifts focus to the complex, tangled web of three powerful noble factions waiting in the wings to seize the sudden royal vacuum. In Valier, the royal family is deeply interwoven by blood with the three great dukedoms, Lafayette, Lyon, and Mirabeau, and historically, princes would be adopted to inherit a ducal house lacking a son. Consequently, Significant political pressure mounts as Lords Pascal and Daniel of House Leon are drawn into the dangerous royal succession crisis. Lord Frederick then reveals that he, as the Duke of Lafayette, was officially named alongside them as a prime candidate for the empty throne. Casting a dark, troubled shadow, he mentions his brothers and points out that his sudden candidacy is the truly strange part of this royal decree. The woman questions the bizarre logic of the situation, wondering why Lord Frederick would be considered when he has already inherited his prestigious title. Frederick explains a shocking rumor that an illegitimate child of his father has been found, prompting Her Majesty to brazenly declare that if this child inherits Lafayette, then Frederick is free to take the throne. Calling the entire plot outrageous, Frederick details the convoluted requirement that he must first be formally adopted by the Queen to even become crown prince. Clenching his resolve, Frederick firmly declares he will not cast aside the Lafayette name, wishing only to protect the beloved lands his father entrusted to him. Sitting stiffly on the sofa, he looks at his companion and unequivocally states that he absolutely does not wish to be crown prince. The bespectacled woman processes this heavy information, asking if House Mirabeau has two daughters who might complicate the succession further. Frederick confirms the elder Mirabeau daughter is set to inherit, while the Duke himself dismissed the younger daughter, Marion, as unfit due to her sheer dislike for studying. Noticing his subtle reaction, the woman astutely points out that Frederick seems quite familiar with Lady Marion. Sighing heavily as the woman smiles knowingly, Frederick admits the Duke of Mirabeau once forcefully pressed him for a match with Marion, leading to an unwilling meeting he truly detested. The woman leans forward on the grand sofa, a curious expression crossing her face as she prompts him to continue. Blushing slightly, Frederick confesses he feels a little relieved by the situation since he currently has neither a fiancé nor a lover for the impending succession review. A woman expresses surprise that Lord Frederick has no lover, noting that she has been ordered to appear at court with a companion or betrothed. Staring softly ahead, Lord Frederick admits that his world has always been small. The bespectacled woman finds it hard to believe someone so admirable has never had a lover, prompting Frederick to embarrassingly confess his complete lack of romantic encounters or interest in arranged matches. Frederick boldly asks her to accompany him to the palace as his fiancée before the Queen, causing her to scream in utter shock. Eyes spinning with panic, she loudly insists the request is impossible because she is not fit to stand at his side. Frederick just laughs and calls her adorable, while she flusters and begs him not to tease her. When asked his age, Frederick calmly states he is 18, causing the 24-year-old woman to recoil in horror at the age gap. A crushing wave of reality hits her as she agonizes over being a 24-year-old exiled and disowned former noblewoman. Frederick explains that if he appears at the palace alone, Her Majesty will ruthlessly bury him under endless marriage proposals. Resting his chin thoughtfully, he adds that the Duke of Mirabeau will only redouble his political pressure unless he brings a companion. Looking at her intently, he reiterates his strong desire to avoid becoming the crown prince entirely. Realization dawns in the woman's eyes as she begins to understand his true strategy. She pieces together that he specifically wants someone utterly unsuitable to play the role of a crown princess. Volunteering herself as the perfect unsuitable candidate to thwart the royal succession, she misses Frederick's quiet dismay as he begs her not to misunderstand him. While she lists her age and commoner status as perfect disqualifiers for a queen, Frederick dismisses such prejudices, declaring his respect for her wisdom and refinement regardless of rank. He tenderly affirms that to him, she is someone he is incredibly proud of. The woman looks down quietly, overwhelmed by his genuine and unexpected praise. Highlighting her worn appearance, she points out that even her hands are rough and scarred from hard labor. Without a word of hesitation, Frederick reaches out and gently takes her calloused hand in his. He softly declares that her rough hands are beautiful proof of just how hard she has fought to survive. Pressing her hand to his cheek, he closes his eyes and calls her worn hands beloved. Blushing furiously, she violently flinches back and awkwardly stammers as her heart races. Estelle frantically worries about staining House Lafayette and being recognized by the Queen, but Frederick just laughs and finds her scolding strangely refreshing. She exasperatedly points out that her brothers and the Queen know her well, emphasizing the immense risk of this plan. Her fear of being dragged back by House Leon is immediately shattered when Frederick fiercely vows he will never hand her over to them. Gripping her hand firmly, he promises to protect both her and the children, leaving her stunned and softly asking if he truly means it. Frederick assures her that she will always be able to stay safely with Coco and Mia under his steadfast protection. He explains that the sheer weight of being his betrothed will form a political shield, making it impossible for Duke Leon to touch her. Estelle grimly realizes her family would only reclaim her to profit by selling her off into another political marriage. Clasping her hands tighter, Frederick definitively declares that their arrangement is settled. Estelle completely panics when Frederick enthusiastically announces they must show the court just how deeply in love they are. Radiating sparkling confidence, Frederick instantly formally introduces himself as her lover, while Estelle realizes the situation has spiraled completely out of hand. The romantic tension is abruptly broken by a small, inquisitive voice interrupting them. Estelle is suddenly sitting sideways on Frederick's lap, looking utterly bewildered as she questions what he is doing. Coco and Mia eagerly run over, completely fascinated by their mother sitting so intimately on Frederick's lap. Frederick smoothly claims it is just practice to get used to their new roles, leaning into the performance. Peeking out from behind his shoulder, Estelle practically begs the girls to give them a moment alone. The two little girls merely gasp in unison, their eyes sparkling with absolute delight at the romantic scene. Estelle desperately tries to defuse the situation, terrified that her own daughters are misunderstanding the nature of their relationship. Frederick casually whispers into her ear that it is much better not to tell children about complex adult matters. The girls cheer happily about love while Estelle screams in embarrassment, deeply flustered by Frederick's smooth teasing. To make matters worse, one of the girls innocently relays a very suggestive piece of advice, leaving Estelle completely mortified. Having delivered their chaotic commentary, Coco and Mia gleefully run out of the room, shutting the heavy doors behind them. Left alone in the quiet room, Frederick covers his mouth as his shoulders begin to shake with suppressed amusement. Estelle points out his constant laughter, surprising Frederick, who admits he was always told he had a permanently blank expression. The mood instantly shifts as he looks warmly at her, implying his smiles are reserved entirely for her. Staring deeply into her eyes, he confesses that simply waking up and wondering what face she will make has brought true joy to his life. Caught completely off guard by his sudden vulnerability, Estelle can only part her lips in a soft gasp. Still trapped on his lap, her face burns bright red as she yells about how incredibly embarrassed she is to be so close to a higher authority. Frederick feigns innocent confusion about the higher authority comment, reminding the flustered Estelle that this lap-sitting is all just vital practice for their grand deception. Murmuring her sudden understanding, the flustered girl tries to process the bizarre situation unfolding before her. Looming over her with an intense gaze, Frederick suddenly issues a strange command for her to put her hand behind her neck. Startled by the unexpected proximity, she stammers a nervous excuse while questioning his completely bizarre demand. Without waiting for a proper response, he swiftly moves his arm to pull her closer into his personal space. Frederick abruptly wraps his arms around her in a sudden, tight embrace as floral imagery blooms brilliantly in the background to signify a romantic shift. She peers nervously over his broad shoulder, her eyes wide behind her spectacles in absolute and utter shock. Panicking internally, she wonders how long this intense contact will last, estimating that it takes at least 5 agonizingly long minutes. Overwhelmed by the sensory overload, she lets out a startled gasp as her blush deepens significantly. Left completely speechless and struggling to stand, she finds that absolutely no words are needed for this intimate moment. Her face flushes a deep shade of crimson as the overwhelming reality of their sudden embrace fully sets in. Observing her bashful and flustered reaction, a voice affectionately notes how remarkably cute she looks. Their faces draw agonizingly close together, the romantic tension thick enough to cut with a knife as he leans in. Trembling with nervous anticipation, she mentally stutters, desperately wondering if he is actually about to kiss her. Instead of claiming her lips, Frederick gently presses a sweet, lingering kiss against her flushed cheek. Pulling away gently, the two share a breathless, lingering gaze as the intense romantic tension finally breaks. Flashing a warm and disarming smile, Frederick notices her completely dazed state and politely asks what is wrong with her. Completely frozen in disbelief, she presses a trembling hand against her burning cheek while staring blankly ahead. She struggles to process the sudden show of affection, utterly bewildered that something like this just happened. Screaming internally with embarrassment, she finds the entire sweet ordeal absolutely unbelievable. Later, contemplating the approaching Crown Prince examination, she heavily debates whether to reveal her true identity at the royal palace. Resting thoughtfully on the sofa, Frederick agrees that it would be much safer for her to go disguised as Emma Garnier rather than Estelle. They anticipate her greedy father, the Duke of Lyon, will attempt to extort money from them in exchange for recognizing their royal engagement. Opting for maximum security, she resolves to keep her disguise, glasses, wigs, and makeup a strict secret even from her own loyal servants. Reflecting on her true appearance without the disguise, she considers that for the sake of their future, it might be best to eventually tell a certain someone the truth. The dark-haired man sitting opposite them smugly declares that he is not surprised by the revelation, having suspected it all along. He casually gestures toward them, confidently referencing the beautiful face of the woman he originally fell in love with. Flashing a knowing, sharp smile, he assures them that he will never forget that remarkable face. Shifting his demeanor to strict professionalism, he promises to do his job properly while offhandedly remarking that he always knew he should have chosen her. Another young man stares ahead with a sudden, serious intensity as the atmosphere in the room grows remarkably tense. A menacing shadow falls over his eyes as he grimly realizes that something crucial is suddenly gone. Stepping forward aggressively, he confronts her about the persistent rumors that she is merely pretending to be Frederick's lover. He suddenly reaches out and grabs her arm with a firm, unyielding grip, stating that once their current task is done. Staring her down with bold intensity, he shockingly asks if she would like to abandon her post and date him instead. Estelle freezes in absolute terror as a sharp, demanding voice violently cuts through the unbearable tension. Furious at the sudden intrusion, Frederick aggressively reminds the man that they were called for work matters and demands he stop spouting irrelevant nonsense. A tense, awkward laughter abruptly echoes through the room as the three stand locked in a bitter, unyielding standoff. Sweating nervously, Estelle notes that despite knowing him since they were little, she has never seen Frederick this visibly upset. The overwhelming tension in the room causes everyone to firmly plant their feet and brace for an imminent fight. Refusing to back down from the confrontation, the dark-haired man doubles down on his bold proposition and insists that he is completely serious. Having delivered his inflammatory piece, the mysterious instigator abruptly turns his back and walks out through the grand arched doorway. A short time later, an ornate invitation wrapped in roses arrives from the royal palace, signaling that the duo will stay there for a week while the crown prince examination takes place. Frederick heavily warns her that the nobility might treat her terribly during their stay, reminding her that he explicitly told them his fiancée is a commoner. Placing a hand firmly over his heart, Frederick makes a solemn, unwavering vow to fiercely protect her no matter what happens within the palace walls. Touched by his fierce dedication, Emma smiles softly and warmly assures him that he has absolutely no reason to worry. Narrowing her eyes cautiously behind her spectacles, she mentally prepares herself, knowing she still has many lingering concerns to navigate. A bright and bustling morning finally dawns over the magnificent architecture of the sprawling royal palace. A cheerful, childish voice suddenly rings out through the crisp morning air, enthusiastically calling for its mama. Caught completely off guard by the familiar shout, Estelle whips her head around to instantly find the source of the commotion. Two adorable little girls wave enthusiastically from a window, reminding Frederick to take good care of their mom while promising to tend the roses. As the grand horse-drawn carriage pulls away from the opulent palace, the girls joyfully shout for the couple to get along well on their journey. Gazing affectionately out the window, the bespectacled woman claps her hands in sheer delight as she warmly declares how incredibly cute her children look. She continues to wave enthusiastically from the departing carriage, completely oblivious to the flustered, blushing attendants standing right beside her. Standing before the grand architecture of the royal estate, Frederick steps close and possessively murmurs that she shouldn't show such an adorably cute face in front of other men. Caught completely off guard by his sudden remark, she blinks in utter bewilderment and internally questions what he actually means by her cute face. The towering, majestic spires of the royal palace of Vallières loom impressively against the cloudy sky, marking the official beginning of their high-stakes political journey. Escorted by the elite palace staff, the couple walks elegantly down a massive, brilliantly illuminated grand corridor framed by delicate, blooming roses. Two extremely polite servants bow deeply at the ornate entryway, formally welcoming Lord Frederick and Emma while urging them to relax completely during their luxurious stay. Left entirely alone inside the opulent royal bedchamber, she clutches her hands nervously to her chest while deeply realizing the heavy implications of staying in this intimate room with Frederick. The crushing reality that it will be strictly just the two of them alone in such an isolated, romantic space finally dawns on her racing mind. Trembling slightly as she stands behind the composed Duke, she mentally screams in absolute panic, openly admitting that she is suddenly getting incredibly nervous. Startled out of her highly anxious thoughts, she visibly jolts and awkwardly stammers a panicked affirmative response to break the tense silence. Turning slightly with an incredibly suave expression, Frederick smoothly admits he has never seen her without her disguise and boldly asks if she could show him her real hair tonight. She hurriedly agrees that it is completely fine, although she quickly and self-consciously downplays her appearance by stating her flashy red hair doesn't have any particular emotion or unique charm to it. Flashing a devastatingly handsome smile, Frederick assures her he would never do anything to make her uncomfortable while simultaneously stating how much he is eagerly looking forward to tonight. Trying desperately to mask her overwhelming internal panic, she forces a bright, stiff smile and loudly proclaims that she is not worried about his intentions in the slightest. As a sudden knock echoes loudly through the ornate room, Frederick frowns slightly, quietly admitting that he has some exceptionally complicated, mixed feelings about this sudden interruption. A regal servant approaches formally, addressing His Excellency the Duke with an incredibly urgent piece of aristocratic social news. Before the attendant can even fully explain that Lady Marian of the Marquis de Mirabeau wishes to enthusiastically invite him to a tea party, Frederick sharply and instantly rejects the offer without a second thought. Both Emma and the palace messenger are left standing in completely stunned, wide-eyed silence at the sheer speed and utter brutality of Frederick's ruthless refusal. Sweating profusely under the intense glare, the persistent attendant nervously hesitates before adding that the young lady specifically and desperately requested Lord Frederick to grace the gathering with his presence. Looking extremely annoyed by the blatant social persistence, Frederick coldly retorts that he is currently busy enjoying a highly precious, deeply personal moment with his beloved fiancée. Casting a dark, undeniably menacing glare right over his broad shoulder, he aggressively orders the servant to tell Lady Marian to stop getting in his way right this instant. The terrified servant bows deeply and scurries away to deliver the harsh message, leaving Emma to nervously ask if Frederick is absolutely sure about handling the delicate political situation so bluntly. Frederick turns to her with profound, unwavering sincerity, explicitly pleading with Emma to know that he has absolutely zero romantic interest in the daughter of the Marquis de Mirabeau. Peering up at him anxiously through her round spectacles, she openly voices her lingering concern over whether it was politically dangerous or simply too much to reject such a powerful noble family so harshly. After fully realizing the sheer, undeniable stubbornness of aristocratic society, she quietly agrees that sometimes you really have to be that brutally direct for high society meddlers to finally understand boundaries. Frederick's remarkably sharp eyes soften considerably as he gazes deeply down at her, visibly moved by her incredible, mature understanding of his rather difficult political situation. Frederick apologizes for making her worry and explains that despite rejecting the persistent 16-year-old girl repeatedly, her father remained ruthlessly obstinate, prompting Emma to humorously imagine the noble's fierce rivalry with an older, commoner mother of two. Trying playfully to rationalize the aggressive political matchmaking attempt, Emma bluntly points out that technically, Frederick and the persistent young lady actually have a highly compatible age difference. Frederick instantly turns his back in sheer, palpable frustration, his voice dropping dangerously low as he firmly demands to know if she actually finds it acceptable for him to entertain other women. In a sudden burst of overwhelming, uncontainable emotion, he forcefully steps forward and urgently grips her delicate frame to pull her incredibly close to his muscular chest. Holding her tightly, he passionately demands to know what she truly thinks of their relationship, while the mere agonizing thought of Frederick being intimately involved with another woman violently flashes through her panicked mind. Wrapping his strong arms completely around her slender figure, he fully embraces her with a desperate, crushing intensity that leaves her absolutely breathless and utterly trapped in his warmth. Clinging desperately to his broad shoulders, she finally breaks and emotionally confesses that she would utterly despise it if a very important person like him ever decided to marry another woman. Burying her deeply flushed face against his sturdy chest, she shamefully admits that her fierce, possessive jealousy is an incredibly selfish and completely unreasonable thought for someone in her position. Looking up at him with incredibly vulnerable, teary eyes, she softly whispers that losing him to someone else would inevitably make her feel unimaginably lonely. Hearing her incredibly honest and raw confession completely melts away his previous anger, and a beautiful look of profound, blissful relief instantly washes over his exceptionally handsome features. Gently resting his chin heavily on her soft hair, he lovingly promises that her confession is more than enough for now and solemnly vows to always stay by her side because he also feels agonizingly lonely without her. While melting helplessly into his incredibly warm embrace, she simultaneously attempts to ground her racing thoughts by internally noting that in this world, the age of majority is 15, making 18-year-old Frederick a very fine, capable adult. Her heart races wildly and uncontrollably in her chest as she struggles to properly process the dizzying, intoxicating depths of his intense, overwhelming affection. Desperately trying to rein in her wildly fluttering heart, she mentally slaps her own cheeks, fiercely reminding herself to stay remarkably strong because they are technically just pretending to be lovers. Later that highly eventful evening, she finds herself formally invited to a massive, extravagant banquet hosted by the Queen, where all the major political players are reportedly gathering for a highly secretive meeting. Trembling slightly in her elegant evening gown, she nervously wonders what kind of perfectly composed face she should make, hyper-aware that her notoriously cruel and manipulative father is undoubtedly attending. As the towering, heavy gilded double doors of the banquet hall begin to loudly swing open into blinding light, Frederick steps remarkably close and softly promises her that everything will be perfectly fine because he is with her. Taking a deep, heavily fortifying breath to completely steady her severely frayed nerves, she whispers a soft affirmative as they finally step into the sprawling, glittering ballroom filled with the realm's highest nobility. The absolute moment they enter, deeply malicious whispers instantly sweep through the wealthy crowd like an uncontrollable wildfire, with sneering aristocrats ruthlessly mocking the older commoner girl who supposedly has a child. However, the vicious, highly critical gossip abruptly dies right in their throats the very moment the crowd gets a perfectly clear, unobstructed look at her shockingly gorgeous, brilliantly undisguised appearance. Radiating an aura of absolutely unparalleled elegance and breathtaking grace, Emma holds her head high, her profoundly striking true beauty completely silencing the entire massive room of highly judgmental nobles. The previously hostile whispers instantly transform into breathless, incredibly awestruck murmurs as the bewildered guests openly marvel at her beauty, completely and utterly unable to believe a simple commoner could ever look so divine. Completely captivated and genuinely thoroughly impressed by her overwhelming, regal presence, the stunned nobles unanimously concede that she is absolutely, undeniably worthy of being the magnificent choice of Duke Lafayette. As they confidently enter the glittering venue, spiteful nobles immediately begin whispering vicious gossip about how a girl from such a minor family could possibly be engaged to Lord Frederick. Maintaining her fragile composure despite the toxic atmosphere, Emma acutely observes how the aristocratic women wordlessly express their deep-seated disdain for people of lower rank. The suffocating tension worsens as she awkwardly shrinks under the highly unwelcome, leering gazes of the predatory aristocratic men surrounding them. Quickly rationalizing that this is simply how high society functions, she decides to completely ignore the blatant hostility to focus on her true, far more pressing concern. Turning her attention back to her charming fiancé, she is instantly overwhelmed by Frederick's incredibly intense, devastatingly hot gaze. Standing closely together, the stunning couple radiates an undeniably warm and romantic aura that completely baffles the highly judgmental onlookers. Deeply unsettled by the relentless scrutiny, she nervously realizes that the surrounding crowd is openly treating her with overwhelming, palpable suspicion. Completely unbothered by the toxic whispers, Frederick gently reassures her not to worry and smoothly encourages her to continue their formal greetings. Suddenly, a sharp gasp violently tears through her throat as a deeply familiar, utterly terrifying presence registers in her mind. An incredibly imposing, sharply dressed older man with a stern mustache suddenly steps aggressively into their immediate social circle. Pure, unadulterated panic instantly grips her entire face as she desperately tries to process the sudden, horrific encounter. She freezes entirely in place, her eyes widening significantly behind her delicate spectacles as her breath catches painfully in her throat. Trembling in absolute dread beside Frederick, she stares in sheer horror as she finally comes face to face with her cruel, estranged father. The dramatic story of the villainess who became a single mother, an excited voice rings out through the estate, celebrating the fact that they are finally face to face with their father. Striding confidently across the polished floor, a formally dressed group consisting of an elegant blonde man and a woman draped in an exquisite gown makes a grand entrance into the bustling ballroom. Sensing a dangerous shift in the atmosphere, A nervous woman with round glasses tightly clutches her dress, realizing with mounting dread that the social situation is turning incredibly bad. With a suffocating sense of impending doom, she desperately attempts to shrink away from the crowd, muttering to herself that the approaching aristocrats will undoubtedly notice her hidden presence. Oblivious to her panic, a smug nobleman nearby loudly congratulates Frederick on already ascending to the rank of duke and securing an engagement, speaking over a distressed woman who tries in vain to interject. The bespectacled woman freezes completely in her tracks, letting out a confused gasp as the imposing aristocratic men suddenly turn their full attention toward her immediate vicinity. Maintaining perfect composure, Frederick politely greets Duke Leon, acknowledging that it has been quite a while since their last meeting before preparing to graciously excuse himself from the conversation. Refusing to be ignored, the boastful nobleman commands Pascal and Daniel to follow his lead, confidently declaring his absolute reliance on Pascal for the upcoming trials they face. Caught completely off guard by the abrupt and dramatic departure of the noble entourage, a bewildered Frederick trails off mid-sentence, his handsome features marked by clear hesitation and confusion. From the shadowed sidelines, a sharp and intense gaze narrows with calculating precision, silently evaluating the shifting power dynamics and unfolding drama within the opulent ballroom. Stepping forward to mend the rapidly deteriorating atmosphere, a remarkably polite young man bows respectfully, formally apologizing to Duke Lafayette for his own father's abrasive and arrogant behavior. Frederick maintains a stoic and unreadable facade, his jaw set firmly as he silently processes the unexpected apology and the complex political maneuvering happening right in front of him. A palpable wave of collective relief washes over the spectating group, their tense shoulders visibly dropping as the immediate threat of a major aristocratic confrontation peacefully dissolves into polite silence. Taking swift advantage of the sudden lull in the heavy conversation, an elegant woman smoothly redirects the flow of the evening's events by gracefully excusing herself from the lingering nobles. Hidden safely behind her thick lenses, the anxious woman's eyes nervously track the movement of a specific young man, silently noting Daniel's imposing presence within the grand hall. An impeccably dressed attendant graciously guides the noble guests toward their designated places at the grand table, instructing the group to take a seat and patiently wait for the proceedings to begin. Exquisite silver cutlery and pristine porcelain plates lay perfectly arranged on the massive banquet table, highlighting the extravagant scale and immense wealth of this highly exclusive aristocratic gathering. Checking in on her increasingly nervous demeanor, a gentle companion leans in to softly ask if she is all right, prompting her to quietly reassure them with a soft and hesitant affirmation. Slumping slightly in her ornate chair, the bespectacled woman expresses profound quiet relief that she managed to remain entirely unnoticed by the terrifying crowd, though she worries about her observant brother. Seated at the lavish table, Frederick gazes downward with a deeply melancholic expression, his silent and contemplative demeanor hinting at a heavy, unspoken emotional burden weighing on his soul. Shrugging off the cold treatment with practiced ease and a faint smile, she admits to herself that their lifelong indifference to her existence no longer truly bothers her bruised heart. Despite her outward display of calm, a frantic flicker of genuine anxiety returns as she intensely worries that her brother's keen observation means a certain dangerous person might soon uncover her secret too. The murmuring aristocratic crowd instantly falls into a respectful and absolute hush as the grand doors swing open wide to announce the majestic and intimidating arrival of Her Majesty the Queen. Radiating absolute authority and chilling grace, the stoic queen and her esteemed elder companion take their rightful places on the opulent royal sofa that perfectly overlooks the lavish festivities below. Sweeping the expansive room with a cold and deeply calculating glare, the queen's piercing eyes suddenly lock onto a specific target hidden amongst the trembling sea of nobles. Feeling the sudden and crushing weight of the sovereign's direct stare, the nervous woman frantically questions why the absolute monarch is looking directly toward their specific section of the grand table. Trembling violently behind her fan, she desperately tries to rationalize the terrifying moment, desperately convincing herself that the royal scrutiny was merely a product of her own overactive imagination. Clutched tightly together in her lap, her delicate hands shake uncontrollably against the expensive fabric of her dress, betraying the intense terror bubbling just beneath her fragile composure. A brief, suffocating silence stretches across the grand dining table as she takes a strained moment to attempt to steady her rapid breathing and forcefully regain her faltering noble composure. Forcing a fragile and completely unconvincing smile onto her face, she fiercely whispers to herself that everything is perfectly fine, desperately trying to manifest a tiny shred of courage. She inhales a deep, shaky breath, slowly allowing the overwhelming wave of aristocratic tension to pass over her without breaking her meticulously crafted disguise in front of the royal court. Nearby, the arrogant conversation violently shifts to boasting about pure lineage, with a noble proudly proclaiming that the prestigious house of Leon possesses not one, but two exceptionally gifted sons. The venomous discussion aggressively turns toward royal ambitions, with the schemers heavily implying that the eldest son, Pascal, is already being perfectly groomed to claim the exalted title of crown prince. Plotting the royal succession with callous efficiency, the nobles coldly calculate that if Frederick ascends to the throne, Daniel can easily inherit the dukedom without causing any political strife whatsoever. Sneering openly at their political rivals' lack of capable heirs, they smugly point out that the House of Lafayette is inherently weaker since they only have a single son to rely upon. Dripping with unearned arrogant confidence, the ambitious nobleman silently begs the queen to entrust the realm entirely to him, absolutely certain that his path to becoming crown prince is flawlessly paved. Overhearing the venomous political scheming swirling around him, a deeply despondent Frederick internally groans, cursing his dark fate and wondering why his own family has to be so horribly toxic. Snapping him completely out of his miserable reverie, a firm and booming voice calls out Frederick's name, drawing his undivided attention to a highly anticipated and formal introduction. A formal introduction swiftly takes place, presenting the graceful Lady Marian, the daughter of a prominent duke, who has been eagerly looking forward to this very meeting all evening. Flawlessly masking his deep internal exhaustion with perfect aristocratic manners, Frederick smoothly bows his head and courteously wishes Lady Marian a very pleasant evening. Blushing furiously under his handsome gaze, Lady Marian stammers nervously over her words before finally managing to brightly compliment Frederick on his remarkably healthy appearance. Overjoyed by his simple and polite greeting, she beams with radiant enthusiasm, practically shouting how incredibly glad she is to see him doing so well after so long. Watching the innocent interaction from afar, the sneering rival nobleman strokes his chin, a brand new and deeply malicious thought suddenly blooming within his darkly calculating mind. He recalls with a cruel and mocking smirk that Frederick used to be exceptionally frail, so sickly and weak that he couldn't even manage to properly finish his basic aristocratic schooling. Feigning deep concern, the rival loudly mocks Frederick's reclusive past, loudly suggesting that managing a grand domain must be an impossibly difficult burden for someone who rarely even visited the palace. Delivering the final, crushing insult to his character, he arrogantly declares that for someone so inherently weak, shouldering the immense and holy duties of the crown prince would be utterly impossible. Cutting sharply and flawlessly through the toxic banter, the queen's absolute, authoritative voice instantly silences the entire room as she directly and firmly addresses Frederick. Staring him down with intense and terrifying royal scrutiny, the queen demands to know if he is truly managing his domain effectively, firmly instructing him to ask for support if he is struggling. Completely unshaken by the intense public interrogation, Frederick bows his head with absolute grace, formally and respectfully thanking Her Majesty for her surprisingly considerate offer. Meeting the powerful queen's gaze with an unwavering, fiery resolve, Frederick confidently assures her that there will be absolutely no problems with his duties, silently vowing to succeed as long as he remains by her side. The bespectacled woman smiles brightly, having successfully built a thriving business and raised her twin daughters as an admirable entrepreneur. Gazing with profound certainty, Frederick firmly declares that together they can perfectly protect the dukedom alongside someone as incredibly capable as her. Another noble softly calls out Frederick's name, expressing absolute certainty in his bold and shocking declaration. Watching silently from her ornate throne, the queen rests her chin on her hand and fixates her piercing gaze directly onto Frederick. Sitting rigidly in her chair, the disguised woman sweats nervously as the crushing tension of the royal gaze bears down heavily upon her. Her eyes widen in absolute terror behind her thick lenses, her entire body trembling under the immense pressure of the suffocating moment. Lady Marian suddenly gasps in shock, her beautiful face twisting into a furious glare as a sudden realization strikes her. Meanwhile, the grand royal palace stands imposing and silent against the dark, starry night sky. A polite attendant bows gracefully and exits the quiet room, warmly offering their absolute assistance whenever required. Collapsing backward with a heavy sigh, she groans about her utter exhaustion and frantically wonders if her disguise truly worked. She frantically questions how she went unrecognized from such a close distance, suspecting that Daniel deliberately pretended not to notice her at all. Staring blankly ahead, she heavily contemplates the incredibly strained dynamics of her deeply fractured noble family. With a bitter and resigned expression, she accepts that complete indifference is exactly how her remarkably cold family has always operated. She fondly recalls how she and Daniel desperately struggled to lovingly support one another through their incredibly toxic upbringing. Dark memories resurface of their horribly arrogant father and an abusive elder brother who ruthlessly bullied his younger siblings. She shudders while remembering her bewitchingly beautiful mother and the highly inappropriate, scandalous scenes she was forced to witness as an innocent child. Her father remained hopelessly obsessed after falling in love at first sight, rendering him completely unable to ever oppose his wicked wife. Because she strongly resembled her mother, the older woman grew fiercely jealous when her adoring men began casting their wandering eyes toward her much younger daughter. The wicked mother glares down with absolute hatred, her twisted jealousy completely isolating the young girl from any parental affection. Crushed beneath her mother's bitter resentment, she found herself completely and utterly isolated within the cold, unforgiving walls of the ducal estate. Reaching out into the darkness, a gentle hand warmly grasps hers, proving that Daniel was the only person she could truly rely on. Looking tenderly at her younger brother, she reflects on how growing up in such a toxic environment nearly caused Daniel to permanently despise all women. Because she was always there to gently guide him, Daniel maintained his fragile trust, fueling her desperate wish for him to finally find true happiness. Closing her eyes with deep emotional resolve, she vows that securing her beloved brother's joy remains her single greatest mission in life. The heavy curtains flutter softly in the quiet room as she releases a long, emotionally exhausted sigh. Standing alone by the moonlit window, she gently shakes her head, deeply regretting letting those incredibly unpleasant memories resurface tonight. She nervously touches her flowing hair, cursing the flashy and striking features she unfortunately inherited from her deeply despised mother. A sudden spike of anxiety grips her chest as she frantically wonders exactly how Lord Frederick will react to her true appearance. The heavy door suddenly creaks open, shattering the quiet solitude as a familiar voice announces his unexpected return. Stepping into the softly lit chamber, Frederick abruptly freezes in his tracks, his eyes widening as he takes in the stunning sight before him. Stunned, completely breathless, Frederick stares at the beautiful woman before him, slowly and softly whispering Estelle's true, hidden name. He intensely studies her bright spring-green eyes and delicate tear mole, leaving her blushing furiously at his overwhelmingly intense scrutiny. Unable to hold back a single second longer, Frederick passionately pulls her into a tight embrace while breathlessly calling her incredibly beautiful. Gazing lovingly down at her flustered face, he praises every single inch of her, deeply admiring her vibrant hair and delicate tear mole. He traces her cheekbone with infinite gentleness, mesmerized by the most breathtakingly beautiful eyes he has ever witnessed. Leaning in impossibly close, their lips perfectly align as he softly murmurs that they are undeniably bound together by absolute fate. Estelle timidly pushes back against his chest, nervously stammering that they do not need to pretend to be passionate lovers when nobody else is watching. Flashing a deeply mischievous smile, Frederick smooths her dress and confidently declares that their romantic atmosphere must be flawlessly maintained 24 hours a day. Trapped perfectly in his strong arms, Estelle internally panics over living inside a literal romance novel while he insists they act like passionate lovers at all times. Her bright eyes tremble violently with overwhelming emotion as she tries desperately to mentally process his incredibly bold declaration. A tiny spark of genuine hope ignites within her racing heart as she wonders if Lord Frederick purposely sensed her hidden feelings to warmly encourage her. Gazing up into his deeply affectionate eyes, she completely surrenders to the warmth, realizing just how incredibly special this person truly is. As the bright sun spectacularly rises over the palace spires, the intensely grueling days of royal evaluation finally begin. Strolling gracefully through the marble halls beside Frederick, she successfully manages to keep her true identity perfectly hidden while living as Emma. Every single step they take is ruthlessly scrutinized by palace officials, deeply observing them from every angle to constantly determine their fitness for the throne. Facing a notoriously strict civil official, she is thoroughly interrogated on incredibly complex subjects like high finance, aggressive diplomacy, and national defense. Drawing smoothly upon her rigorous past education as Roland's fiancée, she intentionally leaves certain answers vague to successfully avoid looking suspiciously perfect. The ultimate trial finally arrives in the form of a highly intimidating afternoon tea, silently serving as the absolute final interview with the Queen and Queen Dowager. The terrifying royal matriarch smoothly sips her tea before sharply calling out Emma's name, instantly demanding her complete and undivided attention. Piercing completely through the polite facade, the Queen Dowager drops a tremendously heavy question, fiercely demanding to know exactly what kind of King Frederick will become. Duke Frederick stands solemnly alongside the woman known as Emma, whose focused gaze is hidden behind her glasses. Looking out at the grand estate, Emma remarks that while it is not her place to presume, she recognizes Lord Frederick as a man who considers every perspective. She emphasizes her belief that the people are the true foundation of any nation. With deep conviction, she asserts that Frederick will devote himself to the prosperity of the country and the protection of its citizens' lives. Her words focus on the enrichment of lives rather than mere economic growth, showing her unique wisdom. Observing from a distance, the Queen and her companion share a silent, knowing look of approval. The narrative shifts to the following morning as the sun rises over the kingdom. Frederick and Emma appear in full formal regalia, prepared for the monumental announcement ahead. Addressing the gathered nobility, the Queen expresses her sincere gratitude to everyone for answering the day's summons. Standing with regal authority, she offers a deep apology to the nation for the trouble caused by the former Crown Prince Roland. In the center of the Grand Hall, she prepares to announce the new successor who will take Roland's place. She explains that the Crown has carefully considered every possible angle to find a person truly capable of total devotion. As the court waits in hushed anticipation, she searches for the one individual most fitting to lead the kingdom. Frederick offers a quiet word of reassurance to the nervous Emma as they stand before the throne. The hall is struck with sudden silence when the Queen loudly declares Emma Garnier as the new Crown Prince. Duke Leon is frozen in a state of utter disbelief, his eyes wide at the mention of the commoner's name. The younger nobles in the audience are visibly shaken, their faces contorted with shock at the Queen's choice. Amidst the tension, Emma and Frederick remain the focal point of every staring eye in the room. A wave of confusion sweeps through the assembly as the nobility struggles to process this completely unexpected turn of events. Whispers of dissent and bewilderment ripple through the crowd as the order of succession is shattered. A bold nobleman dares to question the Queen, asking if Her Majesty has truly considered the weight of this decision. The Queen responds with a piercing, intimidating glare that demands silence and absolute respect. Narrative text underscores the chaotic energy of the moment, highlighting the unprecedented nature of the announcement. Emma feels the immense pressure of her new title as the new Crown Prince settling upon her shoulders. Standing beside her, Frederick acknowledges the magnitude of the Queen's decision to name Emma as the successor. The Queen reveals that the conclusion was reached only after consulting with various officials and listening to the opinions of the servants. She explains that Emma was the only candidate among all the others who prioritized the people as the foundation of the nation. Proclaiming the future, the Queen states that Emma shall succeed her as the reigning monarch with Duke Frederick Lafayette serving as her royal consort. With a confident smile, she asserts that this pairing is the absolute best choice for the kingdom's prosperity. Emma remains in a daze, barely able to fathom the reality of the life-changing events occurring around her. Blushing and overwhelmed, she struggles to maintain her composure while realizing she is now the future queen. Furious at the decision, Duke Leon slams his hand down and shouts that he will never accept such a farce. He sneers with classist rage, disgusted by the idea of a commoner with no royal blood sitting on the throne. The Queen calmly repeats his dismissal of a commoner, turning his own words against him with a dangerous edge. She sighs and tells the Duke that he is honestly blind to the truth standing right in front of him. Her voice turns mocking as she insults his inability to recognize his own flesh and blood. A sudden realization hits Duke Leon like a physical blow, his expression shifting to one of sheer terror. Emma realizes that the Queen's sharp eyes have seen through her disguise from the very beginning. The Queen addresses her directly, dropping the pseudonym and calling her by her true name, Estelle. She issues a royal command for the girl to remove her wig and glasses to show everyone her true identity. The Queen watches with a triumphant smirk as the stage is set for a massive revelation. She simply confirms that she was aware of the truth the entire time. A dramatic swirl of movement signifies the shedding of the commoner's disguise. Surrounded by a cascade of roses, Estelle is revealed in her true noble form, radiating grace and beauty. Performing a graceful curtsy, Estelle apologizes to Her Majesty for concealing her identity for so long. The Queen introduces her to the court as Estelle de Leon, the former daughter of the Duke who just insulted her. She highlights Estelle's years of rigorous bridal training and the injustice of her false accusation and expulsion by Prince Roland. The Queen reminds the Assembly of her previous status as Roland's former fiancée, further legitimizing her claim. She acknowledges the hardships Estelle endured while maintaining her dignity and values. Duke Leon is left speechless and trembling as the Queen reaffirms her choice to crown the daughter he once discarded. The Queen firmly asserts that there is no obstacle to Estelle becoming a royal princess given her noble blood and lineage from a house closely tied to the crown. She issues a stern warning that any person who treats Estelle with disrespect shall be charged with insolence toward the royalty. With the ceremony of the empire underway, the Queen officially proclaims that Estelle has become the new crown princess. The Queen clarifies that the man Estelle eventually chooses as her husband will ascend to the title of future royal consort. Turning her gaze toward Frederick, the Queen recalls his earlier vow never to abandon the Lafayette name or his ancestral lands. She confirms his eligibility for the position of royal consort as she continues to outline the future of the succession. The monumental weight of the royal command hangs heavy in the air while the court processes this sudden shift in power. Estelle and Frederick react with visible shock, their breath catching as they struggle to grasp the magnitude of the Queen's decision. While acknowledging the heavy burden this decree places on Estelle, the Queen insists it is the only way to ensure the kingdom's prosperity. Her expression remains resolute as she justifies her choice as the best possible outcome for the realm. She leaves a cryptic opening by stating they may reconsider the throne only if a worthy king appears in the distant future. With the historic proclamation complete, the Queen officially brings the day's turbulent proceedings to a close. The formal audience ends abruptly, leaving the gathered nobility in a state of utter confusion and whispered dissent. Duke Leon explodes in a blind, classist fury, denouncing the Queen as a foolish tyrant whose eyes have grown blind to the truth. The disgraced Duke stands defiant amidst a ring of guards as his world and status crumble around him. Despite his desperate shouts for the Leon ducal house to resist, the Duke is forcibly silenced by the authorities. Sensing the growing danger, Frederick urgently tells Estelle they must leave the palace immediately to find safety. Even as they retreat, the Duke's hateful screams echo through the halls, vowing that he will never acknowledge Estelle as his daughter. Their carriage thunderously departs from the palace gates, racing away from the chaos and into the fading light. Safe within the carriage's shadows, Estelle collapses into a fit of tears and apologizes for the trouble she believes she has caused. She laments that she has only become a crushing burden for Lord Frederick to bear through this ordeal. Panic seizes her as she realizes the impossibility of her new rank and fears a potential separation from her children. Clutching her hands in despair, she trembles with uncertainty and wonders how she can possibly face the future. Frederick reaches out to grasp her hands, his voice calm and steady as he tells her to be brave and stay calm. He makes a solemn and unbreakable vow to protect both her and the children no matter what trials they face. With gentle conviction, he reassures her that they will find a way to always stay together regardless of royal law. Estelle looks at him with tear-filled eyes, searching for strength within his unwavering and protective presence. As the carriage rumbles on, she asks him with a heavy heart if he truly desires to become the royal consort. The scene shifts to the quiet of a private estate where the echoes of the palace intrigue are momentarily silenced. Later that evening, a weary Estelle rests in her quarters while continuing to apologize for the suffering she has brought upon him. Frederick stands vigil in the dimly lit bedroom, his silhouette reflecting the deep resolution he has held since the morning. His intense gaze fixates on her as the gravity of his secret feelings begins to surface in the silence. Sitting by the bedside, he reflects on his own perceived selfishness and the motives behind his elaborate plans. He offers her a sincere thank you for enduring the complications and putting up with his demands. When she tries to protest, he gently insists that she listen to the truth he is finally ready to confess. He admits that asking her to play the role of his lover was merely an excuse to hide his deeper intentions. Estelle is stunned by the admission, admitting she never expected the Queen to actually name her as the successor. He looks at the new crown princess before him, his gaze softening as he drops his cold exterior. Confused by his revelation, Estelle sits up in bed and asks him to explain exactly what he meant by an excuse. The intimacy of the room grows as Frederick prepares to bridge the distance between his lies and his true heart. He confesses that every step of his scheme was ultimately driven by a desperate desire to get closer to her. Although he doesn't want the crown, he declares that he is willing to endure any title as long as it keeps him by her side. He pledges his loyalty whether he is a prince, a consort, or even if they were reduced to simple commoners. Estelle is left breathless by the intensity of his confession, her heart racing as she processes his devotion. She asks him in a small, bewildered voice why a man of his stature would ever want to be with someone like her. Frederick can only sigh and cover his eyes, seemingly exasperated that she still doesn't recognize her own worth. He stands before her, the silent tension between them finally breaking into a moment of pure emotional clarity. He reaches out a steady hand toward her, bridging the final distance in the quiet sanctuary of the room. With a tender and affectionate gesture, he gently pats her head to comfort her and dispel her lingering doubts. He speaks her name one last time, cementing their bond as they prepare to face the uncertain future as one. Frederick tenderly kisses Estelle's hand, signaling a tectonic shift from their usual professional dynamic. Kneeling amidst a flurry of petals, Frederick pours his heart out with a direct and startling confession of love. He gazes into her eyes with unwavering intensity, clarifying that his feelings for her are purely romantic and deeply personal. Without hesitation, Frederick presents a formal proposal and asks Estelle to become his wife and partner. The suddenness of the proposal leaves Estelle completely stunned as the reality of his words begins to sink in. Blushing furiously, she tries to deflect the heavy atmosphere by reminding him that she is 6 years his senior. Estelle points out her status as a mother with children, but Frederick remains undeterred, insisting that her past changes nothing between them. He praises her compassionate nature and admits he fell in love while watching her raise Coco and Mia with such selfless devotion. Though Estelle prioritizes her daughters above all else, Frederick continues his earnest and relentless pursuit of her heart. Overwhelmed by his noble status, Estelle confesses she lacks the confidence to ever make a man like Lord Frederick truly happy. A sense of deep adoration hangs in the air as the weight of his feelings fills the silent, decorated room. She reflects on her life as a mother, realizing her capacity for love is defined by the children she protects and cherishes. Frederick begs for a chance to prove his worth, promising he is willing to wait while she puts her daughters first. Vowing to stay by her side through any hardship, he declares his resolve to endure whatever challenges come their way. A soft exclamation escapes her lips as the conversation takes a sudden turn toward an unexpected and probing request. Estelle stands before the kneeling lord, bracing herself to ask a question that has been weighing heavily on her mind. With a sudden burst of energy, she encourages him to speak his mind and reveal whatever else is bothering him. Frederick maintains a steady gaze, assuring her that her maternal love for Coco and Mia is something he deeply respects. His tone shifts to one of possessive warning as he tells her never to give her heart away to another man. With a playful yet chilling smile, he suggests that he might just have to lock her away if she ever dared to be unfaithful. The two stand in a heavy, charged silence as the power dynamic between them shifts into uncharted territory. Estelle attempts to lighten the mood by brightly declaring that she has absolutely no romantic interest in men at all. Joseph enters the scene with a knowing smirk, questioning her about his own flirtatious behavior toward her. Dismissing the attention as simple politeness, Estelle laughs off the idea that there is any deeper meaning behind the flirting. Frederick explains that Joseph was a top student and notes that Italian culture practically mandates such chivalrous behavior toward women. Impressed by his sophistication, Estelle marvels at how much Joseph has grown and learned the ways of the worldly elite. A shadow of annoyance crosses Frederick's face as he watches her praise another man's worldly charms and experience. He observes that despite their differences, men often share the same underlying motives when it comes to the women they desire. Frederick finally breaks the tension by urging her to retire for the evening and get some much-needed rest. Before departing, he leaves her with one final, whispered declaration of his absolute love for her. Estelle stands alone in the quiet room, her mind racing as she tries to process the whirlwind of emotions from the night. The full weight of the marriage proposal finally hits her, sending her into a dizzying spiral of panic and confusion. She begins to question every past interaction, wondering if his supposed acting was actually the truth all along. Clutching her head in despair, Estelle realizes she has no idea how to handle this monumental shift in her life. The shock remains visible on her face as she frantically searches for a way to respond to such an overwhelming confession. Meanwhile, out in the city streets, newsboys shout about a shocking revelation regarding the neighboring country's crown princess. Commoners gather in excitement, gossiping about the high-profile news that has finally reached their kingdom. They discuss the identity of a noble lady from Voliere named Emma, wondering about her mysterious and tragic background. The report reveals that Ediel was exiled on false charges and has been living in hiding to protect her true identity. Eager to see the famous lady for themselves, the citizens decide to visit the restaurant she reportedly owns and operates. The narrative confirms that Emma Garnier is actually a high-ranking ducal daughter who was forced into a bitter exile. Back in the safety of her home, Estelle complains of a massive headache while Joseph tries to regain her focus. Joseph offers a quick apology for getting sidetracked and prepares to return to the serious business at hand. He formally suggests they move forward with the personal authentication process to verify her true identity. Looking every bit the serious official, Joseph focuses his full attention on the documents resting before him. He addresses her by her true noble name, Estelle de Leon, marking the start of the official magical verification. When asked for her date of birth, she calmly confirms that she was born on the 20th of November. It is revealed that Joseph's true mission was to gather definitive proof that Emma Garnier and Estelle de Leon are the same. In this world, magical power serves as a permanent, unique identifier that never changes from birth until death. Joseph prepares for the final stage of the investigation, asking Estelle to describe the specific traits of her magical power. A serious official warns Estelle that her answers are being recorded and any discovered lies will be treated as a crime. Attempting to soften the mood, the official reassures her she will be fine but emphasizes his strict obligation to explain the rules. The interviewer's intense gaze zeroes in as he begins his questioning. When asked about contract magic, an illegal and cruel practice once used for slaves that results in death if broken, Estelle firmly denies using it. The questioning shifts to her capabilities regarding charm or transformation magic. Estelle admits she can use neither, prompting a murmur of disbelief about whether transformation magic actually exists. A dark-haired man in glasses notes that while shapeshifters are incredibly rare in literature, the law requires strict confirmation if there is even a slight possibility. Recognizing the invasive nature of the procedure, he offers a polite apology, which she gracefully accepts. He explains that if she were truly a transformation magic user pretending to be Estelle, the verification would catch her. Any such illegal deception would be exposed immediately. The dark-haired official offers a reassuring, gentle smile. He confidently adds that a magical disguise would fall apart right away under their scrutiny. A sudden flare of magical energy surrounds Estelle's hands as the verification spell takes effect. With the process finished, the official formally announces that the verification is complete. He confirms her identity as Estelle de Leon, the former duke's daughter, to which she expresses her profound gratitude. Moving to the next step, he asks whether to classify her status as noble or royal while bringing up the adoption procedure for Coco and Mia. Overwhelmed by the weight of the conversation, Estelle looks visibly troubled. A sudden, sharp interjection of "no" cuts through the tension regarding what will happen at this stage. The man remarks on the shocking development of Estelle being appointed crown princess, assuring her she has no need to apologize. Meanwhile, a busy maid reminds her that becoming royalty will restrict her actions, especially concerning the restaurant. An older cook calls out an order from the kitchen, validating the maid's practical concerns about their daily work. Estelle admits her anxiety about becoming crown princess, but finds reassurance in Frederick's promise to ensure she is never separated from the children. Out of nowhere, the dark-haired man bluntly confesses that he likes her. Flustered and red-faced, Estelle insists she is fine, overwhelmed by too many confusing things happening at once. She explains that Frederick went to persuade His Majesty to change his mind, which the man finds perfectly understandable for anyone suddenly told they are becoming a princess. Staring thoughtfully, the official admits he wouldn't be able to endure being a princess either. He looks up curiously, wondering about the current situation. The official casually asks why she isn't going as well. Estelle explains that Frederick went all by himself because bringing her might leave him bound by unwanted obligations. The dark-haired man smoothly shifts gears, officially changing the subject. He reveals that her former academy classmates are planning a reunion and are eager to see her. He watches her closely to ask what she thinks of the idea. Her face lights up with joy as she enthusiastically agrees, longing to see everyone again after so much time. Pleased with her eager response, the man promises to make the necessary arrangements. Estelle politely thanks him before a sudden hesitation stalls her words. She timidly asks if she should wait and consult Frederick first. The official instantly shuts the idea down, declaring there is absolutely no need to consult him. He hesitates for a fraction of a second, bringing up something that happened the other day. Estelle shrinks back slightly, feeling it is unfair to be cornered like this. She awkwardly stammers, confessing her lack of experience with romance. Defending her guardian, she points out how incredibly kind Frederick is and how well he takes care of Coco and Mia. Startled by her earnestness, the man bluntly asks if she actually likes Frederick. Under his intense stare, Estelle ponders whether her feelings lean toward dislike or affection. A quiet moment passes as a soft, hesitant smile touches her lips. She admits she is deeply grateful that Frederick treasures the children and genuinely considers her feelings. Still uncertain, she tentatively states she isn't in love, almost asking for confirmation. Frustrated by her own confusion, she ultimately confesses that she simply cannot tell what she feels. The man smoothly pivots the heavy conversation with a casual remark. He shocks Estelle by pointing out she is now considered the most marriageable woman in the entire country. He warns her that her natural attractiveness, combined with the enormous bonus of becoming a future queen, will inevitably cause greedy people to flock to her. Surrounded by an overwhelming number of love letters, she realizes that even House Leon is relentlessly trying to contact her. A maid holds a stack of envelopes while the protagonist anxiously wonders if her father and brothers are involved in the sudden influx. Standing resolutely, Frederick deals with all the overwhelming attention together to desperately protect her and the children, earning her deepest gratitude. Standing tall in the dimly lit library, Frederick gazes down attentively at the seated protagonist. Adjusting his glasses with intense focus, Frederick firmly declares that the match isn't decided yet. Exuding sharp confidence, he commands her to remember that crucial fact. A royal carriage approaches silently through the lush, sunlit foliage. Standing alone by grand windows, she is heavily burdened by the unforgettable weight of Joseph Sama's words. Closing her eyes in sheer exhaustion, she wonders desperately if he is joking or entirely serious. Walking down a beautifully lit grand corridor, she reflects on who she can truly trust during times like this. Blooming flowers frame her thoughts as she warmly realizes exactly who she can rely on. Bursting with joy in the kitchen, the twins gleefully shout for their mama to look at how perfectly the egg whites stood up. Beaming with absolute happiness, she listens as her daughters proudly explain how a magic tool made the flour fluffy enough for a delicious cake. Radiant with pure maternal joy, she delightfully declares that her smiling daughters are her ultimate healing. A freshly prepared cake pan is carefully placed into the glowing warmth of a stone oven. Catching their mother completely off guard, the twins suddenly ask if something happened with Frederick. Leaning in closer, they gently press their flustered mama for an answer. The girls teasingly ask if she gets embarrassed, pointing out that both she and Frederick turn bright red whenever they see each other lately. Flustered and averting her gaze, the mother stammers nervously as she attempts to answer a hypothetical scenario. Staring up with innocent curiosity, the twins bluntly ask what she would think if she married Frederick Sama. Overjoyed at the thought of becoming a real family, the girls exclaim that they suit each other perfectly, causing the mother to panic over messing up. Desperately trying to temper their soaring hopes, she quickly stammers that absolutely nothing has been decided yet. Expressing her deep uncertainty about the future, she admits she still doesn't know what will happen. As the girls point out Frederick's obvious love and ask if she hates him, she frantically clarifies that she is extremely grateful and certainly does not. Pondering the question deeply, she shyly confesses that she doesn't really know if her feelings go as far as true love. A lingering, unvoiced thought trails off into a mist of romantic uncertainty. One twin brutally asks if her heart races when Frederick kisses her, sending the mother into an absolute, blushing panic. Stuttering wildly in defense, she stammers that they haven't done anything like that together. Trembling internally, she agonizes over what to do as she realizes her heart actually does race. She clearly recalls the heavy feeling of her heart while pretending to be lovers. A delicate touch of hands perfectly accompanies the memory of her heart racing the entire time. She rationalizes that if that intense racing feeling wasn't an unpleasant one, then everything will ultimately be fine. Staring blankly ahead in stunned realization, the mother is left completely speechless between her two observant daughters. A close-up of her widened eye reveals her profound shock as comforting words echo continuously in her mind. Standing before a grand, imposing estate under the night sky, she deeply questions what everything even means. A beautifully sliced piece of cake rests invitingly on a pristine plate. Frederick stands solemnly and respectfully beside her as Her Majesty the Queen makes a grand appearance. the narrative somberly reveals that the Queen still feels responsible for Roland's broken engagement 6 years ago. Due to these past events, Her Majesty intends to adopt Estelle and Angira now that House Leon has officially disowned Estelle. However, the Queen remains firm that Estelle is the most suitable candidate for the Crown Princess position, though she would accept a change if a better successor is found. Frederick bows with deep respect, expressing his profound gratitude for her understanding. Gently touching her arm, Frederick offers a warm, reassuring smile and tells her not to look so discouraged. Holding a resolutely calm expression, he firmly reminds her that nothing has been decided yet. Looking exceptionally dashing, Frederick places a hand over his heart in a silent vow to protect her. She gazes up at him, completely overwhelmed by his unwavering devotion and the protective promise he makes. A beautiful close-up of her eye captures her intense inner turmoil as she wonders if any woman could resist falling in love with him. Reflecting on his brilliant mind, kind heart, and adorable sulky expressions, she happily admits everything about this beautiful man is captivating. The sharp, painful memory of another man coldly declaring he isn't in love violently interrupts her romantic thoughts. Pushed to the brink of confusion, she desperately questions if these current, overwhelming emotions could somehow not be love. Gazing into the starry night, she painfully remembers being firmly told before her arranged marriage that her late husband wished to be alone on the anniversary of his former wife's death. Sitting across from him at a dimly lit table, she reflects deeply on her former life husband who was 10 years her senior. Despite his serious and gentle nature, a painful, lingering realization severely clouds her mind. The heartbreaking truth was that he never once told her he liked or loved her as a woman. Although she remains incredibly grateful for the peaceful life they shared, she firmly believes that even after their marriage, he continued loving his late first wife. Looking sadly at a withered flower in a cracked vase, she sorrowfully acknowledges that the emotion called romance simply did not exist within that life. Suddenly, she struggles to process her past, wondering if that racing feeling back then wasn't actually an unpleasant one. Trembling slightly, she gently touches her chest, overwhelmed by the sudden and confusing swell of unfamiliar emotions. Staring deeply at his broad back, she desperately questions whether she truly disliked that pounding feeling in her chest. Meanwhile, the name Estelle drifts through her thoughts, pulling her once again into a deep state of vulnerability. Flushing deeply with anticipation, she vividly imagines a scenario just like when they were pretending to be lovers. Embracing the intense feelings that have begun to sprout, she nervously wonders what kind of reaction she would get if she explicitly asked him to touch her. Her sprawling memories immediately shift back to one fateful day while staying at the royal palace as a candidate for the crown prince. She vividly remembers his striking features, such as a beauty mark under his left eye, fresh green eyes, and red hair that shines brightly like gold in the light. Suddenly, an intense wave of emotion hits him as he exhales deeply, expressing immense relief to have finally found her. Meanwhile, a figure remains carefully hidden among the rustling, beautifully sunlit foliage of the garden. The profound realization that it was always her hits hard, sparking an earnest, emotional plea for Estelle to remember. Relaxing confidently in a luxurious chair, he intensely recalls that defining incident from exactly 13 years ago. Gazing out at the magnificent Voliere castle 13 years ago, he reflects on his frail childhood where he hardly ever went outside. At just 5 years old, he arrived at the royal palace for the very first time, brought by his father the Duke for a formal audience with the Queen. Frantic urgency fills the air as palace staff desperately rush to prepare for their imminent arrival. Stepping forward, the imposing presence of Duke Lafayette effortlessly commands immediate respect and absolute attention. Looking up innocently, the young, wide-eyed boy calls out to his father with mild confusion. Kneeling down gently, the Duke apologizes to young Frederick about an urgent matter and asks him to wait in the room, promising to be back soon. With a subtle, disappointed frown, the young boy quietly agrees and says he understands the situation. Outside, the majestic sky gradually shifts as about 5 excruciating hours painstakingly pass by. Sitting entirely alone on a massive sofa, the young boy exasperatedly realizes his busy father is not coming back at all. Having lost his patience, Small Boots quietly step off the grand furniture, ready to finally venture out into the unknown corridors. Wandering completely alone down the vast, empty corridor, he nervously calls out, asking where his father could possibly be. He slowly pushes open a massive, sunlit door, stepping cautiously into the breathtaking, sprawling outdoors. Moving forward, The sharp, observant profile of the young noble captures his innocent yet fiercely determined gaze. He stops dead in his tracks to marvel at the incredibly ornate and beautifully decorated palace hallway sprawling endlessly before him. Sudden panic sets in as he looks around, completely lost, frantically wondering where he even is. Startled by a sudden noise, an adult voice aggressively demands to know who is there, accompanied by a frightened gasp. Trembling slightly and peeking out from behind a door frame, the young boy softly mutters in hesitation. Alerted and panicked, someone loudly shouts that there is an intruder hiding nearby. An angry voice sharply demands to know what the young boy is doing wandering around in a restricted place like this. Terrified by the severe shouting, he screams an apology and desperately sprints away as fast as his little legs can carry him. Taking quick refuge in a beautiful, secluded garden pavilion, he breaks down into quiet, miserable sobs. Nearby, a young, elegant girl stops silently in her tracks as she hears a distinct, sorrowful sniffle. Startling the crying boy, the young girl suddenly appears over the lush bushes and kindly asks what the matter is. Peering at him with large, beautifully concerned eyes, she gently asks if he is feeling sick. He jumps back in complete shock, uttering a startled gasp as the elegant girl calmly sits down right beside him. Handing him a delicate cloth, she softly asks if he is okay and offers it to wipe away his heavy tears. Wiping his tear-stained face, he looks up at her with profound gratitude and softly thanks her so much for the kindness. He stares at her in absolute awe, completely struck by her breathtaking, ethereal beauty. Smiling brightly through her own pain, she explains she embroidered it as a gift but was told they didn't want it, so she is incredibly happy to hear his thanks. Even as she smiles kindly at him, a subtle, lingering hint of sorrow beautifully highlights her youthful, expressive face. Reassuring him that it's absolutely all right, she offers to give it to him if he likes it, entirely dismissing his embarrassed protests that he would feel too bad accepting it. With genuine, heartwarming insistence, she firmly asks him to please just take the beautifully embroidered gift. Gripping the cloth tightly with both hands, he blushes deeply and offers a sincere, heartfelt thank you to the mysterious girl. A young girl smiles warmly, radiating a gentle and innocent charm. Reassuring a young boy, she firmly promises that everything will be okay from now on. Recognizing him as the Duke's son, she eagerly greets the boy, who introduces himself as Frederick Lafayette and politely asks for her name in return. Exuding confidence, she declares that he should leave everything to her as she takes charge of the dangerous situation. Frederick is joyfully embraced by an older man, likely his father, while the mysterious young girl watches them with a heartwarming smile. Her good deed accomplished, the young girl quietly walks away down the grand, sunlit corridor. Apologizing to Frederick, his father listens as the young boy desperately pleads to find and thank the brave girl who just helped him. Regretfully, the father admits that he has absolutely no idea who the young lady was that came to his son's rescue. While a loyal servant suggests at least revealing her name to the boy, the master sternly shuts down the idea, insisting that the matter is completely closed. It becomes abundantly clear to the adults observing the situation that the young boy has already fallen deeply in love with Estelle. They intensely fear the devastating heartbreak that would inevitably follow if Frederick ever discovers that she is actually the crown prince's fiancée. A somber realization washes over the present-day Frederick as he deeply reflects on the painful truth hidden from him in his youth. Looking back on his kind father's actions, Frederick realizes the lie was told out of pure consideration, as his father intimately knew the royal family and definitely knew about Estelle. Fast-forwarding to the present day, he marvels at the astonishing twist of fate regarding that very same girl. Unbelievably, the first love he thought was forever out of his reach is now resting peacefully right here in his arms. Overwhelmed by deep emotion, he considers this utterly impossible reunion to be nothing short of an absolute miracle. Although he remembers their fateful encounter with crystal clarity, he accepts that it is only natural Estelle didn't seem to remember him, given that it is a story from 13 long years ago. Gazing fondly at the carefully preserved handkerchief in its display box, he contemplates what would happen if he finally told her the truth. Clasping the delicate fabric to his chest, he reflects on how he has been profoundly and steadfastly in love with her ever since that magical day. Treasuring that precious handkerchief as his most prized possession, he wonders what would happen if he finally revealed his deeply buried feelings. Letting out a heavy, anxious sigh, he braces himself for the daunting vulnerability required to bare his soul. After agonizing over the decision for days, he finally made up his mind, fully aware that his massive confession might honestly be a bit too heavy for her. Kneeling respectfully by her bedside, he boldly declared his love, having decided he absolutely shouldn't let this unprecedented miracle go to waste. Despite taking the terrifying plunge to confess that he loves her and wants to marry her, their relationship surprisingly didn't change much, leaving him lacking confidence in romance since she didn't seem that interested. Noticing a sudden shift in her demeanor a few days later, a visibly confused Frederick asks her what is wrong. For seemingly no reason at all, Estelle suddenly flushes a bright, embarrassed red and frantically stammers that absolutely nothing is the matter. Wondering what she reacted to like that, Frederick senses her reactions have changed compared to before and finds himself swinging wildly between exhilarating joy and deep worry. Sitting across the vast dining table, he cautiously wonders if this adorable newfound awkwardness means she is finally becoming a little conscious of him. He reflects that while others have shown interest in him before, he always found them difficult to be with and ran away, meaning he doesn't have any experience with romance himself either. That profound lack of romantic experience is exactly why he feels so incredibly overwhelmed by the sheer intensity of his current emotions. For the very first time in his entire life, he genuinely wants something from the bottom of his heart, thinking desperately every single day about what he should do to win Estelle's heart. Consumed by this unprecedented first feeling, he silently vows that he'd do anything for Estelle and would be happy as long as she stays by his side, needing nothing else as long as he has her. Suddenly realizing the staggering intensity of his own romantic thoughts, a deeply embarrassed Frederick quickly covers his blushing face and coughs to compose himself. Transitioning to political matters, they discuss how becoming His Majesty's adopted daughter isn't a bad idea, as it would clearly make it easier to push aside the dark influence of the Leon ducal house. Furthermore, she points out that serving as the crown princess remains a viable strategic option until another suitable candidate officially appears. Agreeing that she is right, Frederick expresses his relief, noting that with a bit more experience, Daniel can undoubtedly become a remarkably fine crown prince. A heavy, awkward silence suddenly falls over the grand room as Frederick shifts uncomfortably on his tall boots. Breaking the silence, she curiously points out that he was a bit spaced out and bluntly asks what he was thinking about just now. Caught completely off guard by her direct question, a flustered Frederick struggles to find his words and begins to stammer nervously. Leaning in closer, she flashes a sweet but demanding smile, firmly insisting that he tell her the absolute truth without hiding it. As Frederick seemingly blurts out the embarrassing truth of his earlier romantic thoughts, Estelle is completely stunned into a deep, blushing silence. The sheer gravity of his remarkably honest confession washes over her, leaving her totally speechless with her hand hovering nervously over her mouth. Unable to form a coherent sentence, she can only let out a small, trembling gasp as her delicate face burns with undeniable embarrassment. Gazing up at him with intensely flushed cheeks and wavering eyes, she softly admits that she was wondering about something specific. She innocently reveals that she was just wondering what true love is actually like, a staggering statement that immediately strikes Frederick with the stunning force of a lightning bolt. Instantly panicking at his frozen reaction, a frantic Estelle waves her hands in the air and desperately apologizes for saying something so incredibly strange. However, rather than being put off by the strange comment, Frederick's shadowed face breaks into a dangerously passionate, intensely predatory smirk. Without a single moment of hesitation, he swoops in and effortlessly sweeps a completely shocked Estelle right off her feet into a breathless Princess Carrie. Utterly overwhelmed by the sudden, sweeping romantic gesture, she flails slightly in his strong arms, emitting soft, panicked noises of sheer disbelief. As his handsome face draws dangerously close to hers, all her remaining defenses completely crumble, leaving her hopelessly trapped in the overwhelming intensity of his long-awaited love. Leaning in with a confident smile, the blonde man asks if she wants to practice again, causing her to gasp in flustered shock. Blushing deeply and averting her gaze, she stammers out a confused denial before nervously second-guessing herself. Looking down with a shy expression, she quietly admits that she doesn't actually dislike it. Seizing the moment, he pulls her into a tight, intimate embrace as she nervously clutches his arms. Gently pressing forward, he leans his face intimately against the crook of her neck. He leaves a tender kiss against her skin with a soft breath, drawing a breathless, overwhelmed reaction from her. Suddenly pulling apart on the sofa with a sudden rustle, both of them flush red with lingering embarrassment. Gazing at her affectionately, a soft and deeply satisfied smile touches his lips. Pulling her into a warm back hug, he joyfully realizes that Estelle's feelings for him are definitely changing, finding immense happiness in just a little of her affection. Staring ahead with renewed resolve, he silently promises himself that he will eventually confess that she is his first love. He plans to convey these deep feelings alongside a special thank you, tying them to the memory of the handkerchief he received from her so long ago.